Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I would kindly ask you to take your seats. We're about to start. Exactly. So we also have the poofs here up front. So please, millennials, sit also up front in the poofs. We prepared them for you. Also non-millennials. Very true. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to the Millennial Dialogue on Europe conference. My name is Maria Freitas. I'm FEP's policy advisor, and I'll be moderating today's debate. That promises to be an exciting, but also progressive, positive, and participatory millennial-driven conference. So before we start, and I'm confident that you're as eager as I am, on behalf of FEPS, we need to say our thanks. Our thanks to our partners, which are many, as you can see here. So thank you very much to the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament and Europe Together for joining forces with FEPS to create a EU-wide platform for debate with and for young people for a stronger, more progressive Europe. A special word of thanks also to Think Young, with whom we realized the Millennial Dialogue on Europe report that we launched yesterday and that we're presenting here today. Thank you very much, too, to the Party of the European Socialists, and especially the Young European Socialists, for joining forces with FEPS as well, since 2015, where FEPS launched the Millennial Dialogue on Europe, and we talked with millennials in 23 countries all over the world, and we engaged with this generation. So thank you very much to the Young European Socialists and Party of the European Socialists. A word of thanks is also owed to FEPS member foundations and think tanks, who joined as well forces with FEPS in demystifying the negative attributes that are often given to this generation. My generation, millennials just like me, millennials just like you. No, we are not lazy, we are not apathetic, and we are definitely not politically engaged. We are very much engaged, and we saw that yesterday at Elsenhof with all of the participants, and many of you are here today also then to challenge our dragons and to enter in our engaging fishbowl discussion. So thank you very much to Stichting Gerrit Krevelt, Institut Emilie van der Velde, and Fondation Jean Jaurès. Most of you have also appreciated the exposition that was presented already yesterday at Elsenhof. So this presentation was possible due to the cooperation of FEPS with Territoire de la Mémoire, where we brought the amazing and diverse exposition of Mr. Oliviero Toscani, world-renowned photographer that is also here present with us today. Later on today, we will also be able to appreciate more of his exposition, and as well at the vernissage that marks the end of this conference later on tonight in Montepaschi, Schumann. And we are at Microsoft, so of course there is Wi-Fi for you to engage with us. I'm going to explain to you a little bit more of how we can do that. So here you can also see the code that will be screened shortly. And also for you to know, FEPS engages really in an interactive debate. This is also our aim for here today's conference. And so we will be using Slido, which is also an interactive platform that you're invited to log into. It's quite easy. So you should just go into your browser and type slido.com by entering the access code millennials. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. And FEPS and partners, we prepared a poll for you. So are you happy to be with us today at the Millennial Dialogue on Europe conference? Did you manage to log in? No network? At Microsoft, no network. No, there should be network. All right, here it is. So I'll leave you a little bit of time to do that. So, did you manage to log in? Okay. I'll be patient. Millennials. Whilst you also log in, an information as well for those of you who could not attend, that the conference is going to be web streamed, but also filmed. So for those of you who could not be here with us, please, the friends that are here in the room, share the link so then those who cannot attend can also participate in today's conference. And for your information too, our social media team will be listening to you on Twitter too, so make sure that you engage with us by using the 2 hashtags of today's conference, notably Millennial Voices and Europe Together. Can I get a nod around the room if you managed? Not yet? Yes, I see some yeses. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So once you're ready, we can launch the poll, hopefully. Or if not, we can also go by a show of hands like we did yesterday, not a problem, right? So if everybody managed to log in, or if not, let's just put the poll up to see. Okay, we have 14 votes. So some of you managed to connect. Yes? Can we get those numbers up, maybe? $15, very good. So slowly we're getting there. Very good, 17. But we're more in the room. We would like to know if you're happy to be with us. Yes? Yes? Very good. So, okay, even though with some slight delay in connecting, not a problem. Thank you very much for being here with us today to discuss the ways in which the millennial generation should be empowered ahead of the European elections, and most importantly, of how European institutions and its policymakers should also embrace the power of this generation, but also give space for this generation to be heard. So thank you very much. Without further ado, then, I call Mark Mosse, Senior Director for EU Government Affairs at Microsoft. Mark, thanks for hosting us.
Good morning. I will be brief. And thank you for coming. Thank you to the FEPS, thank you to Think Young, thank you to all the partners involved in this very, very exciting project. And I would say thank you to the millennials who have been part of this dialogue. It's a really exciting read. I have to say I've learned a lot in reading this. We had a short talk with Maria João just before to start, and there is a lot to learn from this report, a lot of food for thought, some question, I have to say, and some call to action for those who are involved in the European project. I will be short, as I said, and I would love just to mention a few things. First of all, I just want to remind that, because we are a few months before the election, that in 2014, I had a look on the vote from the millennials, and I realized that only 27% of the millennials have voted in 2014, which is a few. And even in some countries, because I'm French, I will mention France, but it was 14. So I think it's something that we should keep in mind, and it shows that we absolutely need to involve the millennials in the day-to-day of politics. And I think it's something which is really important to look at. Nowadays, people, and the youth in particular, and the millennials in particular, are not only waiting for the election day, but between elections they want to be part of the debate and the dialogue. And if I had to bring on the table one idea from the report, I would say this. One of the big learnings from this report is that we should absolutely to manage new ways to engage the dialogue all the time, every day, with every citizen, but with the millennials in particular. And this is something that I would love to emphasize today, just to start, just to open up the second day of this nice event. And as Microsoft, I want to say how we are happy to be part of this nice initiative. And now I will let the floor to Maria Joao. O palco é seu, Maria Joao. I hope that I've said this with a good accent. I've been told that this accent is more from Brazil than Portugal, so I did not know that I have any roots in Brazil. But anyway, we are in a world where borders are some ways at stake. But we know that beyond borders there is a need for more fraternity, and this is something that we should absolutely keep in mind. So now, Maria Joao, o palco é seu.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much, Mark. So a call for fraternity beyond borders, a call to engage the millennial generation ahead of the next European elections. So FEP's president, Maria João Rodrigues, but also vice president of the Socialists and Democrats group in the European Parliament, will share with us her vision of how progressives can and must engage with the millennial generation ahead of the crucial European elections next year.
Thank you very much, Maria, and good morning, everybody. Marc Mosse, many thanks for hosting us. This seems a very appealing conference. This started very well yesterday, I know, and I'm sure that today will be again a big moment for our good discussion on this. Let me tell you, first of all, that we, FEPS, with all the partners Maria just identified, this is a large partnership, we are especially proud that we could undertake such an important operation to listen to young people in Europe and to get their ideas, their aspirations. We really need to connect with young people as the main compass for the European direction. Look, let me share my reflections with you and the way I think we need to use the conclusions of this big operation in these terms. Everybody knows that Europe is at the crossroads now. Big decisions will be taken over the next months, even before European elections. We have big decisions about how to address climate change, how to drive the digital revolution, how to prepare the next budget in such a way that we can increase Erasmus or the youth initiative. All these will be at stake for the next months. But then, of course, we have European elections, and as Marc just said, it's very important that young people are more active in this big moment of decision. And then, after elections, we need to prepare the next 5 years term. New European Parliament, new Commission, and a new world, in fact. So big decisions will be taken again. Therefore, for us, it's really central, not only, I would say, to listen to young people, but to give young people a much stronger role on these decisions about their own future. Frankly, I think that if Europe is not able to provide a better future for European young people, there is no real reason for the European ambition and project. This is as simple as that. So let us first of all see who are they. And this operation of survey shows this very well. Who are the millennials? Well, they are a generation who went through a difficult period with the financial crisis, the recession, divergences between the member states, who were confronted with a new relationship with the neighborhood, sometimes war, sometimes poverty, larger waves of migration coming in Europe. All this is part of their environment. But most of all, I would say this is a generation deeply concerned with climate change, and now everybody sees that climate change is there, and a generation for whom to be digital is the normal way of life. And the digital revolution, we know, is entering in a new phase. If you combine Internet of Things, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, we know that very soon we'll be surrounded by all objects will be smart and connected objects. So it's a completely different way to live in our houses, in our transports, in our factories, in our offices. Everything will be changed. And also the way we decide, the way democracy operates. But this generation is prepared for this. This is their normal way of life. So what can we conclude from this big survey? What are their aspirations? Well, of course, they are concerned with, this was very striking in the outcomes we got, with poverty, social inequalities. They feel there is something wrong. There is a lot of differences across our societies. And they want to address this when it comes wages, working conditions, access to lifelong learning, participation. This is a big concern from this generation. Then we also see that, yes, they want to move to, let's say, a low-carbon way of life. They understand why this is necessary. They understand why we now have a United Nations agenda for everybody called Sustainable Development Goals. They understand why we need this. And then we see a last very important concern, which is about participation. And participation, first of all, regarding particular causes. This is a generation fighting for causes. On climate, on the access to culture, on the access to mobility in a fair way. So, and most of all, they want to make sure that they are going to an open society. This is so clear. And then we see a last concern, which is about democracy. And in fact, yes, we know this is a generation fighting for causes, but we also know this is a generation who wants to be present at the heart of European institutions. They are coming with this call. We should have more young people, well, just close to us in the European Parliament, right here, but across the board, in national parliaments, in governments, in municipalities. Yes, we need to give the opportunities to open the ground and the way for this youngest generation, because otherwise we cannot invent the future we need. So they are right about this. Now let me tell you what I concluded from myself as a European politician. Because one of the questions is, what does this generation think about European Union as such? Do you really need a European Union? And this is striking to say there's an absolute majority of generation is saying yes, yes, we need a European Union, and a stronger one, and I would say a progressive one. This is so clear from their responses. Of course, they are concerned with Brexit. Some of them are also saying, well, we don't know, perhaps other countries might follow. They are also concerned, let me underline this, with differences among young Europeans. When it comes member states and inside each member state, they are paying attention to this. But in the end, they say so clear that we need to have a united, strong Europe to address the new challenges. And then they came with bold ideas. When it comes negotiating trade agreements, they also refer to the European defense, by the way. They are in favor of European defense. But most of all, I would say they want a stronger Europe to tackle climate change and to make the best of the digital revolution. This is a clear message coming from them. Last but not least, they are coming with a criticism regarding politicians, so myself included. And their criticism, and I think they are right, they are saying, well, politicians, they should have more communication, more discussion, more debate with us, young people, on the direction to be taken in Europe. And I think they are right. Yes, there is a deficit of discussion and participation. But that's exactly why we are running this conference today. So let's make the best. We have many others following the debate, not only in this room. So I welcome again. I'm sure that with Maria, we'll have a very lively session today. I will be here, then I will disappear because I need to go to an important parliament meeting. But I'm back for the fish bowl. And many thanks again, and all the best for your discussion. Thank you, Maria, again.
Thank you very much, Maria, to you too as well, for providing such an insightful overview and snapshot, let's say, of the Millennial Dialogue on Europe report's findings. So here, yes, we see that there's a call for the millennial generation to be heard, an openness of European politicians to embrace this generation. And now it's also time for the next exciting debate that we prepared for you here today, the Dragon's Den. But before we start, a little explanation of how the Dragon's Den is going to run and how the conference of yesterday is crucial in this sense. So yesterday, we had about 100 young people engaged in 5 World Café themes, preparing the messages that will be addressed to our dragons that are sitting here and waiting for you. So we hope, Europe's dragons, that you're ready. So our millennials were hands-on yesterday, preparing the messages on the 5 themes that are going to be addressed to you. And these 5 themes are democracy and European integration, Europe's global role, foreign policy, migration and environment, social Europe, gender equality and education, and last but not least, the future priorities and the new European agenda. But before our dragons take the stage, FEPS and partners have prepared a little surprise for you.
And back to Europe. We now go to our regional reporters to have a look at what the youth think about their future inside the European Union. First, we go to Madrid with Guillermo Burgos. Guillermo, can you hear me? Guillermo?
Yes, check this out. I'm receiving no audio, guys. Number 3.
We'll go for a commercial break first. You can't make me look like a piece of caca.
Please check the number 3, microphone number 3.
Don't do this to me anymore.
Sorry about that,
I'm going to walk
Jack.
out of this. This is one time too many.
We are taking care of it.
Check his microphone, please. The number 3.
First, back to Madrid.
I think that European citizens do not have enough control over the economical decisions that EU institutions take because we actually don't have any power.
A minimum wage across the whole union.
Because people don't know what the politicians are actually doing and what the EU is doing. So I think they have to speak to us and have a better communication to the youth and to the people.
I think Europe should have one and the same voice on the international stage. If we speak all together, we are going to be much stronger, and we are.
But we don't seem to be having a good.
Thank you. We hoped you enjoyed the video. This is FEP's way and Partners' way to say, Millennial Voices, the platform is yours. We provide you the megaphone to speak to European institutions and policymakers. Now it's time to call our dragons to the stage. So here first, Enrique Guerrero Salom, MEP of the European, please, MEP of the European Parliament, S&D Group, and also chair of the Global Progressive Forum. Ana Colombo, also from the S&D Group, Special Advisor for Sustainable Development. Anja Skripček, FEP's Senior Research Fellow. Thank you very much. Good morning. And last but not least, Tulia Pitkanen, Secretary General of the Young European Socialists. So let's have applause for our dragons. So, Europe's dragons. We have set the context a little bit of today's discussion. We know that the millennial generation is perhaps distancing itself from politics, European politics. Ahead of the crucial European elections, we would like to have a bit of your input first. A 2-minute input, because then we need to give voices to our millennials, on how would you see involving more young Europeans in the crucial times that are ahead of us, the next European elections. Enrique.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. The first voice was Madrid, which is Spain. I'm coming from Spain. My platform, GPF, is not partner in this event, but we have organized together with FEPS Millennial dialogue mainly in Africa. I will say that this is a generation very active. You can remember 15M in Madrid. It was a real movement that started to change the way that young people look politics. You can remember the movement opposing Wall Street. You can see young people fighting in the Mediterranean Sea to save people working on NGOs. You can see also the movement of women, mainly young women, and also in Madrid, fighting for equal pay for equal job. So there is a lot of activism in young generation. What is missing to transform this in a political dialogue with political actors? I mean, young people involving in politics, not only in causes as your survey shows, but also in what we can describe as political competition. That means political parties, political elections, political discussions, political debates. And I'm quite optimistic because we always say that the young generation is the best prepared generation in the history. We say that 30 years ago, we say that 20 years ago, we say that every time, but it is clear that for the future, the current generation is the best prepared generation because the change is so big and so speedy in the reality that only young generation can cope this change with all the aspects of this.
Thank you, Enrique.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Anna, we see
have
that
to
there.
support him a bit because the panel is gender unbalanced. So I think
Exactly.
So thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me. This thing of the dragons remind me that winter is coming, so we are also waiting very much. A long time no seeing dragons. So it's time for. Seriously, I think that the best way to involve millennials in politics is to have a vision, a program for the future, with, of course, very concrete proposal for today, but indicating a way for the future. That's the reason why our group has embraced convincingly the Sustainable Development Goal as a paradigm for the next mandate and for the over next and over. And our particular angle to face the Sustainable Development Goals, which is a very complex agenda, interrelated agenda for an interrelating and complex world, and for an interrelating and Europe. We really think that the challenges Maria João indicated are the challenges of not an era of change, but real a change of era, as someone said. And our particular angle, and I'm very happy to say it today, because in this very moment there is an important press conference going on in the European Parliament, is to tackle the Sustainable Development Goal from the core central angle of inequalities in Europe as well in particular. Not many people know that, especially after the financial, economic, social and democratic crisis, Europe lags behind on equality, even compared to the United States. Gender, opportunities, and that's becoming a problem. We want to tackle these inequalities with an important report that is presented now in the European Parliament, on which dozens of experts in cooperation with civil society and trade unions worked. We have a very strong game changer in this report, and they are all to fight inequalities and establishing a level playing field in Europe. We go for a radical revision of economic policy to really a sustainable development annual cycle for the European Union, to the indication, finally, of a real European social contract containing both an unemployment insurance scheme in Europe, to a child guarantee. And on this I would like already to ask perhaps a question and put a point on the debate. I looked at your findings, and I was surprised to see that over 80% of millennials consider that helping children is a priority. Over 80% of millennials consider that minimum income and minimum salary is a priority, but only 52%, even if it's a majority is good, consider that tackle inequalities should be considered at the core, and therefore a priority, of a progressive agenda in the European Union. I see a little contradiction. If we don't fight inequalities, economic, social, territorial, recognition inequalities, we want to be able to tackle the necessary ecological transition for Europe. It's really the core of all the battle, is the core of the problems, and I really hope that also via this debate we will be able to insist on this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. So, Anya, we came to understand from Enrique that today's ways in which the millennial generation engages in politics is perhaps different, more of political activism for causes such as sustainable development goals, the call for a stronger role of Europe in addressing climate change. But Anya, your expertise also lies very much within parties. So how can our parties be more open to embrace this sort of activism and these sort of causes that are so close to the hearts of the millennial generation?
Well, first of all, very good morning to you all. I'm not sure if it's more scary to be a dragon or to actually, act as a dragon. I'm not sure because we are very much exposed to the challenge of all the different proposals that we are almost, threading to hear. Now, I have missed millennial generation by 2 years. I was born 2 years too early, but that also means that I was born in Poland behind the Iron Curtain. I was born in Poland where if you wanted to go abroad, you had to ask authority to have a passport. I was born in Poland where there was a shortage in terms of economy, no security, and the best chances that you could have had probably, and this is what my parents embarked on, was the promise of education, that if you educate your children, perhaps once upon a time they will have opportunities to live in a free world. Now, soon after, this has changed, and millennials, for me, is a generation that was born in the times when we were already singing, this very cheesy song of the Scorpions, The Wind of Change. And I think you can all hear the bass now, right? What this song, The Wind of Change, signifies for me in terms of the moment the millennials were born to, was the moment of promise. A promise of a better tomorrow, of more opportunities, of freedom, of a way to self-determine your future, the way where actually nothing is impossible and each and everyone can contribute to making the world a better and fairer place. Now, I think that the problem that we are having is that this very generation is being left 25 years later with a legacy of Europe that speaks about limits of politics, that speaks about challenges. If you hear continuously, digitalization is going to destroy jobs, the climate change is melting our mountains, etc., and etc., it's very hard to be optimistic and to engage oneself in politics. So echoing a bit what Enrique and Anna has brought forward, what we need is actually courage in terms of politics, and politics that goes beyond the regular and beyond the self-limits. Now, I think the scary thing that comes out from our survey, and we've been doing millennial dialogue now for over 6 years across the world, not only in Europe, with very diverse partners and with very diverse audiences, and we've always been insisting that it has to be progressive, participatory, and positive as such, is the fact that, we've been living a lot of comfortable truths. It's very easy to say millennials don't vote because they don't know. Millennials are the most knowledgeable and informed generation ever in the planet. I mean, of course one can discuss the fake news manipulation and so on, but it doesn't change the fact that accessibility of the information, what's happening on the other side of the globe, is something that moves people around. And if I look at the statistics, every 5th person, at least in Europe, is a millennial. If we look how many of you would vote, the equivalent, if we count the first row of this conference, only 1 of you would go to vote. This is scary. Why is that? Because politics I believe in, is a politics about this better world, about social justice, equality, that Anna enlightened to. And when this genuine feelings, the feeling of altruism, engaging and doing something for the others, meets with the managerial politics of managing globalization, managing crises and so on, there is a disconnection, and this connection we absolutely had to tackle. Just very last point, because 2 minutes in Brussels usually go very quickly, as you see. This is a millennial dialogue on Europe. And I think that the sad part about ahead of the European elections, what comes out from our survey, is that the millennials do feel Europeans. As much as me, Polish, 25, 30 years later, I do feel European. But the question is in how far European Union is the point that connects European together. And I think the problem there is the disappointment that the European Union doesn't deliver. And this is the fact that the young people are putting forward to us. It's not that they want to have less Europe, they want to have more Europe. What kind of Europe? Now, I'm a generation different, so I do hope that the Dragons then will allow us also to debate and to discuss and possibly disagree, and that's my very last point. I'm a veteran of the youth movement, and in my times you needed to kick a lot of doors to be able to state something politically. Today, with the Millennial Dialogue, there is a lot of opportunities to enter the stage and speak. But honestly speaking, even though the dialogue is bringing a lot of people forward, the only value of having a future that you design is the future that you need to fight for, you need to combat, and you need to start contradicting us as much as you can. What we need actually in order to change the party is a revolution on your side. And with this call, I'd like to finish off for the moment.
Thank you very much, Anya. So, millennial pitchers, it's clear that our dragons are ready for you. Thank you very much, Anya. So yes, our survey shows that millennials are giving the benefit of the doubt to the European project. They value very much our European Union. Nevertheless, they might be expecting something else that EU institutions and policymaking are delivering. Our next dragon, Tulia Pitkäinen, Secretary General of the Young European Socialists. So tell us, how do you kick down doors and empower millennials in European institutions, policymaking, and our progressive parties?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's really, really a valuable project. I really love the way that the FEPS has engaged to work with us and to bring this kind of a point of view of research also to our work. As we in the Young European Socialists, we unite all of the youth organizations of the socialist and social democratic parties in Europe. Well, I think that this can be a good moment to be a little bit provocative and say that, honestly, in my opinion, we cannot have a winning story or a better policy that will bring the young generation for us. I don't think that our political family, as it is, can create that story without radically including the young people more. And how to do this, I would like to present maybe 3 different perspectives. First of all, the most important thing, in my opinion, would be to build democratic structures in the youth level. For example, and we can see that it works in some countries, the youth organizations that have the most members per population in YES are actually from Sweden and from Norway. And in both of these countries, they have a very heavy and strong tradition of school elections, where the political youth organizations run school elections throughout the school system, where the young people grow into party political understanding, where they grow to the system, and also in these countries, also the voter turnout is very high. So this is a structural reform that we should really put forward as to build a democratic tradition. I think this really works, and we have shown examples of it. So to build a democratic structure, this is a long-term goal that we have to take seriously. And this is a matter of culture and a tradition, but I think it can be done everywhere. I think it would be really interesting to see what would be the result of a youth school, like it's like a shadow election that we would do on the European Parliament election throughout Europe and all of the schools. So this is one thing. The second thing that I would put forward would be the role of the party political youth organizations, also in our political family. So we know that the policy that comes out when you have a youth-led youth organization is always different than when you have youth in dialogue with the adult party. So I think that a very important part of our political family and all of the parties to get the youth involved more is actually to support the political decision-making that the youth is doing among themselves. So youth-led youth organizations would be my second point. And then the third is more closer to us and much more concrete. That would be just to put more young candidates on the list. Because often when we talk about young people in political participation, we speak about our story. What do we say? What should we say in order to make the young people vote for us? Well, actually, I don't think that we can say much anything. I think we have to have the young people say it for us. And we always speak very highly of the youth involvement in our political movement, and it is great. And it's actually, we are better at this than the other political parties, so I give you that. But at the same time, when it comes the time to actually set up the electoral list, where you have to put the young candidate in an electable position, then it's not so important anymore. So these would be my 3 points. Thank you so much for invitation and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Tulia. So the three main points here from our Young European Socialists. And now our dragons are ready, and our millennial pitchers too. I see them here in the audience. So how this will work is that our millennial pitchers will tell the messages that they prepared for you yesterday, and you will also have very quick time to react. Let's try and keep it under 2 minutes because you spoke for 5. And then we revert it back to the audience, and they are also able to engage in the proposal, whether you agree, whether you have another recommendation, another idea. This is how it will unfold under the 5 thematics. So, okay, so I see here first our millennial pitcher. Could we get a microphone for Aaron? Come for it. So Aaron was our spokesperson. Okay, I'll give it here, please. Does it work? So Aaron was our spokesperson for the Democracy World Cafe, and he will challenge our dragons with his message from today and also all of the millennials that took part in his workshop.
Thank you very much, Maria. First, before I start, I want to really say that I could also advocate some of the ideas that you pitched right now, Tulia, so I think you should be an MEP. So please make that happen, if we can still make that happen. I think the lists are already out, but maybe we can change it. Anyway, those are great ideas, but the idea that the Democracy Board had goes a little further than that, because what we actually propose is to institutionalize events such as this one, you know. We want to have dialogues, we want to have engagement of youth, but not only of youth, we want to have this engagement in an institutional manner. This is why we are proposing, and you could use a nice term like home parliaments for that, obviously. That sounds really good and catchy. So that's how we're going to call it for now. We want to have dialogues that are actually dialogues, because I recently have been to a European citizen dialogue, and there was actually a commissioner and a DG communication representative, and they were speaking for about 90% of the time, while we didn't even get to make any proposals at all. I was raising a very critical question to Commissioner Navracic, and he got personally insulted, and that's how it all turned out, you know. But this is the sort of engagement that we were talking about earlier. So our proposal, if I want to get to that now, is to really institutionalize those dialogues and to bring in more meetings like this, also to bring together people from all over Europe, because Europeans are diverse and this is our strength. We are united in diversity and we want to bring this diversity to the table. And we have all over Europe people with great ideas. We have all over Europe people that are experts in specific fields. And you said it, Maria João. We are cause-driven, the millennials, you know. So we should bring those experts for specific causes together and have them design proposals that will actually then be put forward as legislation, you know. On the further run, maybe we could even abolish the Commission's right to initiative, but mostly it's important that those ideas are being heard and are being put on the stage. I have participated in the European Youth event this summer, and it was a real shame because you were mentioning, your name was Anna, right? You mentioned that there's a very important report being shown in the EP today. And it's not only this one, it is a very important one, but also in the Committee for Constitutional Affairs, there's the hearing today for the European Youth Events proposals. And that's very important because constitutional affairs is about reforming the EU and making it more democratic, which is the very quintessence of our proposal. But I've seen on Monday already one of those hearings, and it was a real shame because there was not even 5 MEPs sitting in the audience listening to the pitches by the European Youth Event representatives. So that was sort of one of those events as well, one of those citizen dialogues. But it wasn't even heard upon by the MEPs. So that's the real shame that I think that we need to combat with our proposal. We want to make those citizen dialogues, those home parliaments, that there's actually a voice to be heard, not only for young people, but obviously millennials should have an extra loud voice in that. And I think we have the courage and we have the strength and we have the voice that we can raise if we get a platform like this. I mean, you can see it obviously with all those strong women and men sitting here and raising their voice. I want to also already give a hint to Jeannie. She's going to raise the most important issue, which is climate change, which should be our first priority 100%. But then, how can we actually achieve that Europe works together? We need to make Europe democratic. And this could be one tool in making Europe more democratic, but on the long run, we're going to need a reform. But this is a first step towards a European Republic with real democracy. So our proposal, and I'm looking forward to your feedback, is to start and to institutionalize dialogues like this in local areas, but also bringing together people from all over Europe, you know, inviting those that usually don't get their voices heard. And just sending out invitations, obviously people are going to reject it to a certain degree, but it's going to get going, and it is a culture. So we want home parliaments. Thank you.
So we had a provocative here pitch by our millennial pitcher from the Democracy World Cafe. Europe's dragons, let's react. So you have 2 minutes. We don't necessarily need to go by the order. Whoever wants to go first can go first. Just get on the mic.
This time I will start, but in the next steps, the other dragons will be the first. First of all, you can realize very easily that I am not a millennial one. But in this...
I usually don't judge by the exterior, but yes.
In this respect, I am on your side. I am a professor of political science. I remember that probably 20 years ago, it was a big debate all around about the quality of democracy. After the Berlin Wall was a debate about democracy cannot be restricted to vote once every 4 years. We have to build a democracy, a real quality democracy with deliberative and participatory aspects, and with inclusion of each social sector, each generation, and so on. I think that in the last probably 10 years, the risk is to transform this move for deliberatory and participatory democracy to a direct democracy using technologies. I don't think this is the real answer. Because as you elaborate, which is important is the dialogue. Which is important is to listen the worries and the proposals of the young people and to be part of this debate with young people, and the young people be part on the policy making, on the process of deliberative proposals for policy making. You cannot replace members of the European Parliament deciding and voting in the Parliament, but you can be part of our reflections, of our preparatory work, of our understanding, a real understanding of the needs of the young people. And so I'm completely in favor, of course, trying to build different steps and different platforms for dialogue among policymakers and young people, and including young people as policymakers.
Thank you very much.
If I may react to that real quick.
No, because the dragons are to react first, and then we give to the floor to our audience. Aaron, I know you're very eager, but well,
I will give part of my time. No,
okay. No. So our dragons are to react very quickly, very shortly.
As to qualify myself as well, I'm no millennial, but I am the mother of two. I have this kind of dialogue almost every night. They are 20 and 21. They are already very much engaged in politics. One more on the side of, she does bioengineering, so the side of sustainable development in the sense of the protection of environment and health. The other one is much more on inequalities, anti-discriminations, and I can tell you every night is very interactive and sometimes it's not very easy, so I'm sort of trained. But I would like to support your proposal 100% and tell you why. As I said, we take the Sustainable Development Goals as our vision for the future, and to be very concrete, Goal 17 is to build partnership for sustainable development. This means a lot of partnership at global level, at institutional level, but also at foremost, it has to be a process, bottom-up, a real dialogue, not lecturing, and it has to start from the local level. And this helps me to say that not only we have proposals, also in this famous report, which is a report of the group, so it's a left progressive report. We hope very much it will become a policy for the European Parliament, but it's a left proposal and a left report. The local level is also the very first level where we can find active engagement for everybody, including those who are not used to get engaged, and we have to go and get them to engage. And it's also the correct place to engage local young people. I repeat, at local level. It was the first experience also for one of my daughter, the last local election 1 month ago. It's very enriching, and it creates the opportunity to continue to engage. And therefore, just as a final word, I think that the proposal of the institutionalization of dialogue, in particular local level, is not only welcomed, but is mandatory if Europe wants to implement the Sustainable Development Goals, because Europe signed for the goals in 2015, not only the 28 member states, I keep saying 28 and I will say it until the last moment, but Europe as such, with the Commission signed to the goal. The Commission was not obliged to do it, but it did with Franz Timmermans, who is now our Spitzenkandidat, and therefore it is absolutely mandatory and compulsory that we introduce this kind of dialogues.
Thank you very much, Anna. So, Aaron, you seem to have halfway through of your support. So, Enrique and Anna support your idea. Anya, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of peer pressure. I mean, sitting here and in front of you, you elaborated and, to disagree. But I actually am going to say I will support you if. Because I think, spaces for the discussions are very important. And we are discussing quite a lot of things. But, means and space is the first step. But I will support you if you put forward also an idea in your proposal, and I hope that this is going to come, on how this is going to change the nature of politics, because it's not about having yet another conversation. I think what young people should be empowered with is learning, for example, from the European Citizens Initiative, maybe have a specific provision for the European Citizens Initiative where young people who have less means to do everyday politics could actually bring a proposal that would have to, in a compulsory way, be discussed on the European level. I'd like young people, in terms of the convention, and we do have, what was it? I mean, unfortunately, nobody speaks about the European Constitutional Treaty because it's a painful memory, but that was the time when we did have the European Youth Convention that did give its own voice for the future of Europe. And I would say that, now when we are discussing so many different things in adult politics or comfortable politics world that I also partially, unfortunately, grew comfortably with, is discussing things like transnational lists to be too revolutionary. I'd like your proposal to be taking that into consideration and demanding more, because Enrique kicked us off with 15M movement, and what 15M movement did, even though today it's a memory, is to change the nature of politics. We couldn't go about not discussing equality anymore. Maybe it's not a structure, but it is something that changed the nature. So I will support you if and only if you're going to take us even a step further. So I'm challenging you here on the danger of being unpopular with the audience.
Let's see, our audience will also have time to intervene on that. So what if, Tulia, over to you. Do you support Aaron's proposal? Or do you also have a what if?
Actually, I support it very much because I think that this proposal that we just heard, it goes to the core of the problem of a dialogue with young people right now. So in order to have your voice heard, you also need resources. And with resources, I don't mean money only, but it's one factor. I mean social resources, how you say social capital. You have to be normally, in order to get your voice heard in the best possible manner, you need to, first of all, you need to speak the language of the country that you are living in, which excludes a lot of young immigrants, migrants, and so on. And second of all, you normally need to have a higher education to understand the system and feel comfortable enough to go on stage and say, what do you think, or to raise your voice. So this is what I mean with resources. And when you don't have a structure, and actually the trend in many of the European discussions and political discussions has been to go into a more non-formal form of discussion. And it's nice, but if you don't have a structure where you give equally the time and the opportunity to speak for everyone, in spite of their background, in spite of their resources, then those who have more resources are always heard more. And when it is like this, it often excludes young people, young women, people with immigrant background, with disabilities, and so on. So this is why, like, creating structures for dialogue, I always very much support it.
Thank you, Tulia. So another support for your proposal, Aaron, with the plea for more inclusiveness on these platforms. Now, look what I have here. I have the catchbox. So any millennial from the audience that wants to intervene, help, criticize Aaron's proposal, ameliorate it, whatever you feel like, you're very welcome to take the mic. Any takers? Okay. Right.
Thank you. I missed it by 2 years, same as Anja. So I'm not a millennial, but I'm going to speak as if I was one. I was in the workshop of Aaron yesterday, and as I work for European institutions, and especially the Commission, I wanted to say that we did not discuss taking the initiative of the Commission. That is very important, and because I myself like it a lot, the power of initiative the Commission has. But what I wanted to say was, first of all, that what we had as an idea for engaging on concrete projects was the fact that we saw that participatory budgets, smart mobility, for instance, and the discussion of the link between climate change and economics were concrete topics on which young people could be involved. And I wanted to just to say this, and also to thank every one of you, because I had the pleasure of working with the Global Progressive Forum of Mr. Guerrero Salom. It was in 2004, I think, with Mr. Verhofstadt then, on an event in the Parliament. I also liked a lot what Ana Colombo said about sustainable development at local level, and Anya and Tulia also with the very concrete proposals for engaging young people. So thank you so much, and once again, concrete projects.
Thank you. So the catchbox is back to me. Any other millennial would like to take the floor? So here we have reinforced a little bit more Aaron's proposal, also with the plea of engagement at local level, more structured, more inclusive, perhaps participatory budgeting on issues such as those that the Global Progressive Forum and the report on the Sustainable Development Goals that the S&D group is putting forward are definitely important. Aaron, you have 2 minutes for a last convincing pitch, because at the very end we will have a vote on the 5 proposals. 2 minutes.
Wonderful. So inclusion is the key. That's very true. I think that I pointed out 2 priorities already. But the third priority, in order to make those things happen, is to reduce social inequalities. So that's at the very quintessence. I just recently went to an event, and most funnily, the notes are right here on my new notes, and it says inequality causes less trust, less solidarity, less participation, less social mobility, and less innovation. Just that as a quick pitch. And then I want to thank you very much for raising this point, because that's very true. We didn't talk about taking away the right to initiative, but that was already me taking a more radical democratization step like you demanded me, Anya. So that is one of the more radical democratic steps that we need to take, and that I want to introduce into this pitch as well, because that's just what we gotta have to do, radicalize democracy. We need real democracy and not what the European Union has now. I'm one of the biggest fans of the European idea, but I'm a very big critic of the European Union at the very same time, for this very democratic reason. I believe we need to give the power back to the people, and this instrument is one way of doing it. Now, the logistics we can talk about at different time, but it's going to be difficult as well. Inclusion, I really like that you brought this out, because we not only want to include those people that are in those echo chambers and that are in those filter bubbles, and with digital means, you can also not reach all people. There's digital exclusion so strong, and I'm studying this, so I know about it. So I want to tell you, we need those compulsory discussions, and they need to be mandatory. We cannot have any more consultations, because we all know that money can buy you consulting time, and MEPs will give more time to events sponsored by Microsoft than youth events like us. It's nice that it's working out in a combination here. So I want to say we have to take away the power from the Commission, and we need to give more power to the MEPs, but we also need to replace the MEPs with more youth, because we need youth voice to be heard. Youth doesn't only want to be represented, we want to be present, and we want to make decisions.
Thank you, Aaron. So I'm going to call Genera now. So a radical idea for a stronger European democracy, a more youth-led European democracy. So now we will hear our second millennial pitcher, Genera, who took part yesterday at the Europe's Global Role workshop. Please take the stage. We're looking forward to hear your pitch.
Hello everyone, my name is Ginevra. I'm here to talk about what was discussed yesterday, making a bridge with what Aaron has mentioned. Once we have established this dialogue between youth and the institutional European Union, we can talk a lot about what we have to say. So what we discussed yesterday, in particular, with regards to the European Union as a global actor, I think there's a lot that can be said about this. There's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of room for potential. But if there were to be a voice given to the youth with regards to this, 3 points were made very evidently the priority. The first point was climate change. Yesterday's youth, myself included, believe that that's the top priority that needs to be addressed by the European Union. We would like more a fast-forward approach, a just transition, and in order to do that, that has to be led with stronger, more present European leadership. The second point is with regards to migration. It's an imminent priority and an imminent challenge that we must face. Not perhaps enough has been done to tackle this. The idea was to focus more on integration and less on deterrence, and that there need to be a more shared solidarity. Perhaps that's kind of the whole point of this political project that we call the European Union. More shared solidarity with a sharper focus on a solution-based approach. And then lastly, and more generically, I would say what was discussed was ensuring more European solutions. What this entails, well, better communication. It was mentioned also earlier. Perhaps there's not enough of it, and not enough of it is well targeted to those who need to be most involved and to those who need to have a stronger say. Smarter cooperation and targeted coordination. So these 3 things need to be at the core of European solutions in facing the challenges that the continent faces and this European project faces. The last point that was made yesterday was that there's a strong awareness from the youth about the limitations of our resources. And as mentioned, we're not only speaking, of course, financial resources, but in general. But there's also a strong ambition, and there's a strong understanding of what could be done more of and what could be made more of this European project. And so with that, there's eagerness and there is drive and there's plenty of youthfulness that wishes to participate in this.
Thank you, Genera. Let's hear an applause. Very, very, very structured here, the proposal by Genera and her friends of yesterday's World Café on Europe's global role. So we hear that we need more focus and attention on the issue of migration. We want just transition, we millennials. Europe's dragons, how are you going to be bringing this about? Any takers? Tulia?
Thanks a lot. First of all, I'm really happy that these topics were the one that were raised. I was just recently reading a study from Nordic countries where they had asked what are the most important topics in the European election for the young generation, and actually climate change, for example, in my region, it was #1. And I think that this is something that our generation really understands differently and really thinks about. There are even terms of like climate anxious, like how do you say, anxiousness, of feeling bad for climate all the time. And I think this is an actual political movement that we're now having among the young generation, as well as the other topics that you mentioned. And then I think that these are important points because normally in European discussion and European election discussion, you always have this problem that you want to talk about stuff that's actually not in the competence of the Union. So when we lose this kind of a connection that we don't talk about European issues on European level and national issues on national level, then the whole thing grows even more irrelevant and people feel that they don't really understand it. So especially with climate change, migration, it's really important that because these are European topics, that they have to be discussed only in the European level. Not one nation can only make any permanent solutions for either one of these. So yeah, I will give a thumbs up.
Okay, so thumbs up. Thank you, Tulia, to Genera's proposal. So yes, a stronger role for Europe at the global level. Any other takers from our dragons? Anja.
Yeah, I absolutely love this proposal also because it slightly comes up in contradiction with some of the findings that actually the report is putting forward about the millennials' image about the role of Europe, whereby some of the data could be also read, and for us it was a striking finding, as the data sort of suggesting that millennials would be rather for Europe that is more closed, which could be effectively a side effect of our recent discussion where Europe was relatively Europe-obsessed. I think that the proposal for me, and this is the most important part of the proposal, and that's why I'm so enthusiastic about that, is because the proposal actually stands for what Europe as a project for the future should be about. We've spent, and I mean, Anne's Secretary General, who is going to address you later, is sitting here, and we've always, complained slightly that Europe of its origin was the peace and prosperity as a promise, and that today people take it sort of for granted, and there's no clarity about what Europe of the future should be about. And while you're talking about climate change, migration, where so many other global players actually withdraw from responsibility, Europe has a unique chance to lead by the example, to say, no, we do have a commitment. So maybe the Europe of the future that you try to build, and this is why I'm so taken, because it's actually very much a values-based proposal, should be a Europe of solidarity and equality of autonomy, where everybody can define the opportunities for the future. So for me, very much of a big thumbs up, especially that, this is an answer also, what do we do with the connected world, without shying away from that, but actually taking that frontally forward. And last but not least, the question of just transition, doesn't it translate to everything that, we are speaking about, the model of production and consumption, the relations between one another, how we take responsibility for one another. And yes, I am sorry as a generation before you that we ate up so many of your resources and leaving you in trouble.
A Europe led by example, a Europe that is progressive and strong at the global stage. Anna.
Yes, but.
Yes.
I agree on all your priorities, provided that they are put under two, let's say, big overarching objectives. The first one is that we agreed that we have to radically change our current economic model. For all our countries, for Europe, and for the world. It seems one of these dreams, but in reality, we can do it. The economic model is not a natural phenomenon. We had a fantastic economic model after the Second World War. Probably with that economic model, we could have tackled climate change much earlier and more effectively. But about 30 years ago, the economic model was radically changed by the neoliberal and the conservative toward a model which was not only an economic, but first of all a cultural model. They won what we called at my age, at my time, the cultural hegemony around their model, and they became the model of the few against the many. We have to revert this in a new economic model for the many. This is the first thing that we have to do, and therefore your objective should be embedded, once again, in the idea of a sustainable development agenda, long term, with also short term achievements, of course, which goes around the three big themes. The first one, stopping, let's say, respecting the planetary boundaries, the 10 planetary boundaries, fighting inequalities, all of them, and resolve the demographic, let's say, hurdle that we live in the world, very unbalanced also when we look at Europe and the issue of migration, and we leave to Enrique. And the second overarching priority is the fact that in order to do so, we have to transform Europe. Let's not confuse Europe, our objective and our dream. It was peace and prosperity. Now, in order to maintain and enhance peace and prosperity, we have to talk about the sustainable Europe. Once we have decided the objective, and we have seen clearly that in order to reach this objective, we have to do it all together. Every country alone cannot reach that goal. Then Europe can become the actor in the world for that agenda. We will all be proud of that. And then we can discuss how to transform the European institutions. Europe and European institutions are two different things. If we go on giving the example that when we talk about Europe, we talk about the defense of the European institution, we'll make Mr. Bannon an incredible gift. Let's start talking first about the Europe we want, and then we will transform its institution. Europe was not born to transform. The cycle of crises we will experience in the future were not there in the 50s and in the 60s. European institutions have to transform radically in order to follow these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. So we have Genera, a half of thumbs up, but you need to include sustainable Europe, European solutions, changing the economic model and transforming the European solutions in your proposal to get Anna's thumbs up. Anna mentioned, Enrique, Europe's many great challenges that we all saw and perhaps some experienced in the past years, migration being one of them.
Well, we have been, I think, a global actor on climate change. We are probably the only big power in the world that are respecting completely Paris Agreement. But on the contrary, we have been a disaster managing migration. I mean, in 2015, about 1 million people arrived to the European borders. That means 0.5% of the European population, and we destroy the confidence on the European institutions, open crisis among different member states and so on, dealing with a very small problem compared with other countries in the world like Lebanon or Turkey or Jordan, that has some of them 1/3 of its population are migrants or refugees. Just the last plenary session in Strasbourg, we were discussing the role of the European Union in the UN non-binding agreement on migration that is going to sign in Marrakesh. And many European member states decided not to support this UN agreement, including Austria, who is now leading the Council. So this is a field, a migration, in which the European Union has to change completely. First, in the relation with the countries that send migrants and refugees to the European borders. We have to think that we are not the only place in the world where the migrants or refugees arrive. At the contrary, in Africa, there are, in the Horn of Africa, there are countries that are receiving 5-10 millions of refugees every war, every tribal war in the area. So we have to change our relations with mainly Africa. We have to invest there. We have to be smart to invest, to provide opportunities to people, young people, with demographic explosion in Africa. And then we have to be solidar inside of the European Union, implementing the decisions that the burden share of, because, I mean, it's not a burden share, because Europe needs migration. Europe has a demographic problem, so we have to be really smart on it, and we have to change it completely.
So you support Generous?
Yeah, let me tell me just 1 minute or even less, because the issues in which we are now thinking about Europe as a global actor are signals of the change that we are living. I mean, for me, the best definition of European Union as a project comes from Jacques Delors. It's a productive economy with a social model inside of a democratic and human rights and democratic rights, with internal solidarity among member states and external solidarity with all parts of the world. This is probably our model for Europe, but this model has to be updated, and has to be updated with the real global problems that we face today: migration, climate change, EU solutions. But we cannot have EU solutions with the budget that we have now in the European Union, because, I mean, we cannot afford European solutions for European citizens unless we have economic means. And if Maria Joao will stay with us, she will say that we need own resources and some changes in the way that we provide means for the European Union.
Thank you very much, Enrique. So, Genera, your proposal was reinforced here with our dragons, actually. So, Enrique, you also gave the thumbs up to Genera, correct, to her proposal? Yes? Okay, very good. With the addition that then we should have a closer cooperation with neighboring countries and changing the European model so it's also stronger at the global level. Sorry. So now it's time for our audience. Millennials, anybody wants the catch box? Anybody? Millennial? Yeah? Here you go. Oops.
So thank you for raising that issue, because I think we've heard a lot of times tonight, or hello, my name is Celine. But yeah, we've heard a lot of times that these are issues that are actually concerning us, because we will have to live in the future, that concerns climate change at a really, really drastic level. I don't think we can talk about like a climate crisis anymore. I think we have to talk about a disaster, because I think it's too small to actually explain it. I think you had a good point by saying, like, we live in a world where we were born into a world where we have to worry about climate change every single day, and our parents didn't have to. And I like to give this example of, for example, my parents had to like fight against nuclear power, and now I had to go demonstrate against coal energy again, and we still have to fight all of these issues. And I think I would like to actually talk to you, Enrico was your name? Because you mentioned that Europe is actually acting the most upon like climate rules, or I don't know how you actually said it, but I would totally disagree with that, because maybe we're doing the most compared to other countries, but I don't think you can actually like have that as a level of saying we're doing enough, because that is just wrong. And I don't think we're actually doing that much, because maybe on the surface, but then we're just doing it in other countries, and not in maybe not within Europe, but then we're, for example, shipping off our electronics to Africa, and then it's just solved. So I think, and then combining that with migration, you have to really, really have the focus on that, because we're not handling migration. Like you said, I agree with that point. We can't handle migration at this point. So how are we going to be able to handle migration once it comes to climate migration? Like, if we can't handle it now, and it's only a few compared to what's going to come in the future when climate changes in places and people will have to leave their countries, their islands are going to go down. So I think we really have to focus on those points, combating climate change, but also we have to actually like face the future that is going to have climate change already at it's already happening. So we already have to think about solutions for climate migration as well, not only war migration, because that's what's happening right now, but we can't handle it yet. So we have to find sustainable solutions for migration, and I think saying that we don't have the resources and we can't have the solutions is never the solution, because we can't isn't an option, because we have to. And yes, we can, because we have to radicalize and just change economic ways as well, I think. So thank you for raising that point.
Thank you, Celine. So here you're actually reflecting the data from the Millennial Dialogue on Europe report. Climate awareness, but yes, we need an action now. So I will just exceptionally give the floor back to Enrique, because there was a specific question addressed to Enrique before then Genera takes the floor for her last pitch.
Well, I don't know if it was a question or a reflection. I agree with you that we are not doing enough on climate change in the European Union. And you are right when you say that we can be proud just if we compare with Trump, or if you compare with China, or if you compare with another big actors. But I think this is, this is completely crucial, because when we discuss about migration, and when we discuss about the reform of the economic system, and when we discuss about inequalities, we are discussing about very, very important problems. But these problems can be managed. But the damages of climate change, to some extent, if they reach at some point, cannot be already managed. So when we discuss about climate change, we are not only discussing what kind of future we will have, but we discuss about if we will have future. And this is, I understand that this is the most important point that we have to work on of the EU as global actor.
Thank you, Enrique. Genera, 2 minutes, not more, please. Last pitch.
Absolutely. It's hard to be concise, but I will try. I'm going to start by saying I'm proudly Italian, and I've seen firsthand what migration has kind of presented to my country and to the rest of Europe. And it's given me a lot of time and food for thought. And I think the migration situation is a true opportunity for the European Union to rethink its identity. So as both Anna and Enrique mentioned, we weren't born necessarily with the idea that we were going to be a political global actor. We were born as an economic community, and perhaps not in our wildest dreams, we dreamt of reaching a point where we can have true input and impact on major global topics. And so, having said this, I do think that we have a chance here to rethink what we wish to be as a European Union and what we wish to stride in and to impact the most. And having said that, the youth does believe that climate change and migration are at the core of this, and that has to be done with European solutions as the foundations to the approach. So we need strong communication and better targeted cooperation among us to sort of lead by example and move forward with concrete action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Genera. Round of applause to Genera. Now it's time for Social Europe. So our millennial spokesperson from yesterday's World Cafe is Carlota. Is Carlota here? Very good. Thank you. So take the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
All right, we're looking forward to hear your pitch. 2 minutes, please. And also, our dragons, I know you're going to be passionate about social Europe, but we need to stick under the 2 minutes, please.
So thank you, everyone. Great occasion for myself. I'm a sport practitioner, so it's development. So I spend a lot of time on the field, not enough actually talking in institution or similar background. It was really great yesterday. So thanks, Maria. Thanks, Davide, for facilitating the course yesterday. Amazing food thoughts all throughout the hour. What we mainly came up for was 4 main points, but I will focus on 2 at the end. The 4 point was, of course, insert a minimum wage. So we know that a lot of countries in Europe hasn't got a minimum wage, and they actually undermine the youth opportunities. But most important, when we implement a minimum wage, we have to ensure it's not going to be ageist. So what often happens, and then younger people get a minimum wage, and then 24 get a different age. And when we're not in skilled labor, what happens is that certain businesses actually prefer to keep employing 17, 18 years old rather than giving chance to older people, and that's where we found the gap on the 20 plus years. What also we spoke about was actually unemployment benefit. So we're talking about unemployment benefit. We know that nowadays having a job is not that secure in spite of your education, and that in spite not being a long-term solution, because we know we're dealing with long-term unemployment as well with a high number of needs, but it could be a start, for example. The other 2 points that we also discussed was the Erasmus Plus. Great projects, work so well so far and need to be expanded perhaps and giving more opportunity. We spoke in particular regarding vocational, but I will get back to it in a bit. The last point that we also discussed was child benefits. So the importance to actually act earlier in disadvantaged situation where actually we can't perhaps making a difference when acting at a certain stage of life of that person rather than later on. Among these topics, the group primarily focused on 2, which was minimum wage, and actually there was a discussion around whether it should be a maximum wage as well, and how this should go across the sector. So what's happening is just not minimum wage, but maximum wage, and that's actually the way forward to redistribute the wealth. Otherwise, we have known that the trickle-down economy is not working, especially in a digital area, where more machines are taking human space, the machine don't pay in taxes, so these money are going more and more in the hand of the few and not in the hand of the many. So it's really, really, really important to think and to probably trying to put forward, I don't know, as I said, I come from a field background, but it would be probably a good food for thought for the audience. As well as the Erasmus Plus. Erasmus Plus has been great. It's not only the people that actually taken the Erasmus Plus, but also those people that they've met people undertaking the Erasmus Plus. The community that have hosted so many Erasmus in their city, in their local, has been great. And what is important is perhaps trying to make the Erasmus Plus available to anyone. So far we have higher education people attending the Erasmus Plus, but this society is not open for having all lawyers, all doctors. We need vocational skills as well, otherwise there is a mixed skills in the workplace. So what the EU can do, what the EU project, what every of us can do is trying to work towards creating an Erasmus Plus which look at vocational, look at mixing every culture and every social class, giving them the chance and opportunity to travel, and actually to reduce that gap between education and the workplace. Nowadays, how many times young people get into the workplace, and actually now they're overtrained, overqualified for the workplace, and that's end up in long-term internship that can last up to 2 years, some of them unpaid, leaving the young in a labor unstable situation. So that, I hope it was in 2 minutes. I try my best to do so. If not, I apologize, and I pass the word to the dragon. Sorry for anything.
Thank you, Carlotta. Very good. We have the 4 concrete proposals with the sharper focus on not a EU minimum, but a maximum wage and a more expansionary, more inclusive Erasmus+. Europe's dragons, let's try to keep it short and concise. Any takers? Anna. Yes? Oh, very good. And Tulia, too.
Go very quick because I am absolutely enthusiastic about these proposals. They are my favorite until now. So a big yes, a big support. We have to restart and relearn to be indignados. What you said about the maximum wage is incredible. Romano Prodi, the former president of the Commission, wrote a book recently about inequalities and reminded us on the fact that he his first proposal years ago about putting a maximum, so putting a roof to the maximum, was 40 times. So I mean, a CEO couldn't earn more than 40 times the lower employee. Now we are at 200, and even our political movement, I mean, it's a real shame. These people earn so much. They are often in multinationals that don't pay in taxes where they make a profit. And I think this should be at the top of our understanding of changing this economic model. So a big yes to that, a big yes to give the opportunity for an international European exchange, to opening up the mind to other people culture, to understand how it is to live in other country, to every young person in Europe, and not only to the usual suspects who can go to the university and sometimes can go to the university and live up to the additional resources that obviously you have to put if you go for an Erasmus. And the last 30 seconds I would like to use to come back to because it's very much on social Europe, on the last intervention from a Millennial, the girl who spoke about climate change, and to come back again to my issue, which is the one of fighting inequalities. All your proposals are at the core of fighting inequalities. I want you next day or tonight to wake up at 2 and say fighting inequality, fight like that. So I will continue to insist. You know these yellow jackets all around now. Yes. Yeah, you can think whatever about this movement, but this is exactly not the way to do it. The proposals which are on the table, you cannot obtain fighting climate change with correct proposals to attain on additional resources, which should be redirected to fight climate change, if you hit constantly on the same people. So first, let's resolve the problem of inequalities, and then I think that the transformation which are necessary for our society will be accepted much better by everybody. Thank you.
Thank you,
A
Anna.
big yes, an enthusiastic
A big yes, a big yes. So it's a good idea that progressive politics should invest in. So Tulia, over to you.
Thank you very much. I will be brief and I will go straight to the point. The Erasmus Plus, it's a perfect proposal. Also at Young European Socialists, we are very much in favor of the campaign, actually, of the European Youth Forum, that is 10 times Erasmus Plus, that it should be really expanded. Also because it's one of the most successful projects that the European Union has had. But most importantly, because of the point that I mentioned earlier regarding resources. In order to be part of European movement, often these days, to benefit from Erasmus exchange program, for example, you need to be already highly educated and in a little bit of a privileged position to have the capacity to go to a student exchange. So this is why to expand it also to vocational education and to actually to all of the secondary studies, we think it's very important. Thank you.
Very good. So another thumbs up. Anya, you wanted the floor.
Yes, but I'm hungry for more. I mean, as much as Anna, social Europe is something I think I was born to fight for, so to say. I absolutely couldn't agree less with the proposals, but there are two things I'd like to sort of point out. I mean, maybe in my times, which has been already longer enough, one of the plagues of Europe was not only the question of employment and unfair working conditions, but the question of polarization and at all getting into the labor market. And maybe in your proposal, I'm missing slightly the part what's happening with the interns. I mean, taking into account that only between France and Germany, we have about 2 million people, so a size of, population of Slovenia, of people who are neither, and these are not neat, because they are sort of partially having an occupation, but this is coming usually without a decent pay, without decent working condition, without any prospects, and many of those people do 1, 2, 3, 5 internships until they become the generation internships as such, which is a comfortable way of overlooking the problem with the youth unemployment that we are having. So for me, this should be a part of the agenda, especially presented by young people, because as much as I agree with the minimum wage, as much as I agree that minimums are just to say enough is enough, but we want more, I do think that the internships should be part of this proposal. And second thing that I am sort of would like to hint for, and of course, I mean, I would come with the issue of the gender pay gap, because even when we have the minimums, I mean, the starts are not the same for young men and young women. prejudices, social issues, many of them. But when we are looking at the joint employment reports from last week, what we see very clearly is that now within the crisis, it's the generation of women that entered very strongly the labor market, but women are still very much in a very traditional education. So with the digitalization coming up and with other processes, we very quickly are likely to see that the women are going to be, in fact, losers of the transformation. Having said that, this is just one of the examples. What I would like millennials, and I understand the despair of the situation you are in with the youth unemployment and lack of opportunities, but the labor market is changing so quickly that I think I would like to challenge you to also think in the terms of change, expectation, work-life balance, and so on. I know it's only limited to 4 proposals, and actually you were supposed to have one that we were supposed to disagree or agree with, but there is so much more that I think needs to be added for Anna to be satisfied that indeed her appeal to fight for equality and to fight for social justice is satisfied.
Thank you very much, Anya. So, Carlotta, again, another thumbs up with an extra addition of no to unpaid internships, to closing the gender pay gap, and be mindful of the digital transformation and the impact that it can have on women. Very briefly, Enrique.
30 seconds. I think that we have to rethink about our social model. I mean, the social model is made for established people. I mean, it's not for young people, it's not for new needs. It's just to protect, and I think we have to protect, people that are already on work, that are expecting pensions, that are expecting better conditions, following the saying of the Bible when they say that the ones that have will have more. And for young people, I mean, we have to, our social model must be a global social model for all the society, not only to protect people that are already in better conditions than people that are outside of the working market. And concerning education, in a previous life, very previous life, I was Deputy Minister of Education in Spain. And we have always the inequality of vocational education compared with university education. This is really a mistake, and every time is a bigger mistake because the future will need more vocational education than in the past. So I'm completely in favor to provide opportunities to vocational students. There are strong difference among member states, because there are some member states that pay attention to the vocational training and others that take the vocational training as the way out of the educational system. We have to close this.
Thank you. Thank you, Enrique. So, Carlotta, one few last words, and then we're calling our next millennial to the stage.
That's tough. Thanks so much for all your insight and for your opinion. I totally agree with you in terms of social and how we could have discussed that in a wider way. But I think it's quite significant if you see 15 young people getting around the room and the first concern is still minimum wage and is still maximum wage and is still that we are graduated, we have plural degrees, masters, so we speak several languages, and we still can't find our spot in the workplace. And the workplace is changing so radically. The workplace, we know that jobs that exist now, they're not going to exist in 10 years' time. And most of the people that are getting into education now, they're going to get out of education with jobs that don't exist now. So it's a fast-moving world that we need to adapt and go quick. Our first thought and what we'd like to go forward with, despite all, is to start thinking about giving everyone same right, and that start in the workplace, and that start with Erasmus Plus, by giving vocational actually the same rights as education, as higher education. So not crossing, giving chance to everyone to join the vocational as well as the higher education, as well as trying to redistribute the wealth through thinking about minimum wage, which is not ageist, and a maximum wage, which perhaps across all sectors as well, because we know certain sectors get paid way more than other. So to kind of rebalance all the work situation that, and as you said, work balance life. There was someone that mentioned about remote work, flexible hours, actually thinking about, so we know some North European countries are moving towards 6 hours a day working and is actually reporting positive effect in terms of effectivity of the person. So I think that was 2 minutes. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, Carlotta. Thank you, everybody. Now, I'm afraid that we need to speed up a little bit because we're not slightly very behind schedule. I know everybody's super excited with the Dragons Den and the opportunity to speak. We will still be able to do so also at our cafe, networking lunch, at the vernissage that we have here today. So apologies to the audience that we won't get back to you just now. So Carlotta, if you don't mind, we will do the following. So Chris and Andras, you will have 2 minutes to propose your pitch to our dragons. Our dragons will not react. They will promise to react over Twitter to your proposal, if that's okay. And we do the final vote because we really need to speed up. So on gender equality, we had Andras, and on future priorities, we had Chris. Okay, Andras, really 2 minutes, please. Come over to the stage. And Chris is over there, so I see you. Very good. So the microphone is there.
Hello, everybody. I'm
2 minutes, Andras, please.
Millennium 2.0. Anna said rethink an economic model. You said rethink social model. We had a very lively discussion, and GE does not stand for General Electric. It stands for gender equality, and GE stands for gender education and equality. So we should define, first of all, what gender is. Define sexual harassment. Education is key in all this story. And as you said, Anna, equality is key because Europe, Aaron said, give Europe back to the citizens and to the people. People are human beings, and human beings have dignity, have empathy, have altruism, have respect and have passion, and even have love. These are the soft skills. So in society. We had a very down-to-earth proposal. So why not install an ethics or a well-being officer at all levels of organizations, at EP committees, at governmental bodies, at institutional level, in business, in civil society, in cultural sector, where people and women and men can come at a safe place and can express themselves freely without fear of retaliation, and supported by doctors, by lawyers, by therapists for sexual harassment.
We need to wrap it up,
Yes.
please.
So GEE awareness raising as part of a corporate culture. And like in health and safety in a company, we could go for a zero tolerance in this. And of course, a budget line from the EU. And on a last note from myself, why not install a Millennium Commissioner in the next Commission?
Thank you very much, Andras. A Millennial Commissioner, an Ethics Officer, GE Awareness. Chris, the floor is yours. Okay, no. No, we're left empty.
Come back, Anja. Sure?
Come back, Anja, come back.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You said, Anja, you're hungry for more policy proposals to tackle inequality. So here it goes. 1 minute on 1 minute on the problem we identified, and 1 minute on the proposals we have. The problem, we think, other than those privileged millennials that we have here in the room, the people we lose for Europe, the people that we lose for S&D, are those who feel they are not the winners of globalization. They are not the winners of what the EU is doing. They're not the winners of the single market. They're not the winners of the massive transformation we see in our economy with digitalization, with automation. There are people who do not necessarily want to leave the places where they live, and they feel they might have to get the jobs, to get any job or a job that provides the life that they want. So they rebel. They rebel against everything that we stand for as proponents of the European idea. What do we think we should be doing about it? We think we need to be, as the Commission claimed to do and then didn't, big on the big things. Let's be bold. Let's have big proposals to tackle this problem. Number one, let's be serious about giving young people the confidence and the skills to live globally and European-wide. So what we suggest is Erasmus is not only a thing for students, but it should be even more for more students, a thing they do, and it needs to reach beyond that. So when the new commission comes in, they should set a target that by the time they leave the commission again in 5 years' time, everybody who's 18 when they come should have done Erasmus by the time they leave. So not everybody, 50% of the people, everybody should have the chance. 50% of the 18-year-olds when the new commission comes in should have done Erasmus by the time the commission leaves. But secondly, it's not only the skills and the confidence of young people, they also need to have the opportunities to do that. Enrique, you said very aptly, social security systems are not made for young mobile people. So in order for young people to have the same privileges and enjoy the same standard of life that previous generations had, we need to update our social security systems, and that means a serious integration of our social security systems. It's not acceptable that as a young person, if I work in 3 countries for 4 years each, I have worked for 12 years and I have 0 pension rights. These things need to be addressed, and it needs to be done so urgently.
Thank you very much, Chris, for keeping time. Europe's Dragons, so Erasmus for all and upgrading our social security systems. These are the last words of our Chris from the Future Priorities Workshop. Now, I hope that my team already put up the presentations up, please. The names of our Millennial ambassadors. So I would call you to the stage. So Aaron, please come in, Carlotta, for the final vote. Andres too, yes? So 1, in order, please. So we had Aaron first, Ginera, exactly. Aaron, Ginera, Carlotta. Oh, everybody's already voting. Very good. Andras, exciting. Very good. 38% for Aaron, because be aware, you are voting for the killer proposal that the Europe's Dragons need to implement in the next years to come. Very good. 12 votes only. We need to get those numbers up. There are many of you here. Please vote. Go on slido.com. Millennial Voices. The Wi-Fi code. Yeah, Charlotte is deprived from voting. Okay. Ginera, 22%. 18. We need to get those numbers up. Our millennial pitchers worked so hard. Yeah. 30%, 29. 24 people. A little bit more before I close it.
Go for the maximum wage, everybody. Maximum wage, I'm telling you. We also need democracy, but
we need all. Yes, I know. Yes. Ooh. There's a match like yesterday. Almost 28. Did everybody manage? No? Oh. So Carlotta is up now, not Aaron anymore. Very good. 32 people. Okay, whilst you're still voting, and please vote. We are obliged, though, to skip the coffee break. You're nevertheless invited just to take the coffee, come back in, etc., because we really need to speed up. Can we close? Let me just have a last check. 3, 2, 1. Carlotta! Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all of Millennial Pictures, to everybody that worked so hard yesterday, to our Europe's Dragons. This is the policy proposal that you should invest in to get the hearts and minds of the millennial generation ahead of the next European elections and beyond. Thank you very much. So now it's time also for a very exciting component of our program, which is our Pecha Kucha. So what is Pecha Kucha? Is the art of telling a story through photography. And it's quite challenging here. Why? Because our speakers don't have access to a remote control, so they have to speak about their vision of how millennials are to be empowered by the European institutions in 20 seconds. So this is very exciting. And we will go in turns. And also crucially, our Pecha Kucha speakers were one of the many supporters of this great project, the Millennial Dialogue on Europe project. So Burson, Kahn, and Wolf, Coca-Cola, and Microsoft, but also Think Young, with whom we implemented the research that is available for you today. So also, it shows a strong sign that the business world is looking at this generation, perceiving this generation as being an important one, and this also calls for reflection to our political actors here today. So we will have our Pecha Kucha now. Our first speaker is Sara Carrer, Burson, Kahn, and Wolf. So thank you, Sara. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Does it work? We have only 20 seconds per 20 slides, so we need to be fast. So here we are. This is how millennials look like. Age 18, 34 years old. They are 1/4 of the European population. And they are the ones that we want to address for the next European elections. They are the one we listen to in our survey. So now we see how an MEP look like. 54 years old, it's the average age of a member of a European Parliament. Quite of a difference. So it's not just about the look, it's also about the way people think, the way people communicate, and the priorities they have. So if we have a look a bit of the average age of MEPs in the European Parliament, you see that we have 28 years old from Bulgaria and Spain, but also 88 years old from France, with an average age of 50. So what we say today is that we do need the millennial vote. Less than 30% of millennials voted at the last European elections. We know what happened to Brexit if millennials were to vote. So what we want to do is convince them to go and vote. But in order to do that, we need to give them a seat at the table. So my argument today is how we can give that seat at the table. And there are different ways for doing this. Of course, one is something that we can get from, let's say, the US example. It's about putting them in the list. If you have somebody in the parliament that represents you, that you can see it looks like you, she looks like you get sort of more vicinity. This is one way. The other way is what we did together with FEPS, Think Young, Coca-Cola, Microsoft, and other partners. We wanted to hear the voice of millennials. We surveyed 10,000 millennials across 10 European member states. And we are very proud of this research because this is a research that shows that more than 80% of millennials want to be engaged. And this is great news. They feel they are equipped, they feel they know what they want, and they want us to hear their voice. So let's see what they have to say. The first thing is that we have good news. They are pro-Europe. It doesn't mean that they are not critical about Europe. They are pro-Europeans. They believe in the values of the European Union, more than 80%. This is what we should keep in mind when preparing for the next elections. They also ask Europe to have a louder voice at the world stage. They want Europe to address the world issues, the global challenges. And they want Europe to have that voice, but they also tell Europe what to address. And one thing is, as we heard before, climate change. So in time where some people even doubt that climate change exists, millennials do believe climate change exists, and they do want the EU to have a louder voice. They are also asking the EU to address the crisis, the refugee crisis. Of course, we were not very happy when we saw that 60% wanted the EU to protect the borders. But the other side of the coin is that probably the EU has not done enough, and the member states neither. As well as for the economic crisis, millennials were the one that were born during the boom, the economic boom, and then they saw their parents or themselves losing jobs. So they want the EU to do something about it. We said it before, it's about the minimum wage, it's about, and 85% almost ask for minimum wage. It looks a bit getting back to the past, to be honest, but this is what a crisis can bring. They also think equality. 50% ask for gender equality. I would have expected 100%, to be fairly honest. So there is work to do, but probably if we had surveyed Gen X, we would have got to 20%. So at least we are progressing there. We are progressing there because millennials are diverse. They are facing a different society, different families, different colors, and this is enriching, and this is important that we know where they stand in this regard. They are also educated. Somebody before said it. They are the most educated generation in history. Only Gen Z will be better than them. This means that probably they do understand when we talk about economics of climate change. So let's not put the debate at a lower level, but let's put it up. And of course, they are connected. We know that. Gen Z was born on social media. Millennials saw the rise of social media. They do political activism online, likes and shares, and they can say what they think. So if we have to connect with them, we need to connect with them in the right way. These are like 5 basic principles. I believe we have more. We can look at the details of it, but surely we need to use their channels in the correct way and engage. It's not a TV station. So for the next European elections, I think we could get this 1/4 of the population go to the ballot and vote if we do have representatives from millennials in the list, if we are able to address their concern by listening to them, and of course if we use their language. Almost there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So our first Pachacucha speaker. Now it's time to call our second one. So Andrea Gerosa, please come to the stage. Chief Thinker of Think Young.
If we, Sarah, look at the survey and what young people wanted and what we get out of it, and if we look at this generation, we can say one thing and then you can all fall asleep if you don't want to follow. They want to have an impact. They're not a generation with big dreams. They're not a generation that look at something that they cannot change. They want to have an impact. Come to your office and make sure you recycle in your office. If you look at a bit of data, one thing is key. Young people, millennials, are going to be soon, in the next couple of years, the generation with the highest purchasing power. They're already the one in China, they're almost there in US, they're almost there in Europe. As someone said during the Watergate scandal, follow the money. Let's see how these young people buy and how these young people don't buy. Because sometimes if you follow the money, you see where they like and how they behave. What will you not find in this generation? Let's start first for what they don't like, what they don't approach. Definitely, and this is something that most of you who are not millennials will recognize, they don't have as role models greed achievers like in the 80s. This is Michael Douglas in the film Wall Street. This was the role model of many people who were making career in the 80s. definitely not the role model of young people today. And you'll see it if you see the Oliver Stone movie, the second one, it's the same. Second point, that it's clear to all the people who do marketing, sex doesn't sell anymore. It did very much in the 80s, it did a bit in the 90s. Today, it's something probably also with technology and apps a bit so available and a bit so past that it's not so look and important as it was in the past. The third thing that definitely they don't like is, this kind of bling approach of showing off. And we will see later what they prefer. But they're definitely not into ownership. They're not into make sure that you know that they have a big car or a big house. This is something millennials are not about at all. So what are millennials about? This is a nice thing that tells you that probably some of you knows. The largest taxi company owns no vehicles. The largest media owner creates no content. The most valuable retailer, Alibaba, has no inventors. And the world's largest accommodation provider, Airbnb, owns 0 rooms. So what does it tell us about this generation? What do they love? First of all, when they look at their life and they look at what they share on social media, and we look at what they like, not to show off like before the cars or the villas, one thing that is key, and it's called usually mega trend, it's mobility. It's a generation that they like to change. They like to change jobs, they like to change country, they like to change partner. The concept of relationship status very much belongs to this generation. It didn't belong to generation before, because this is something they like to do. And also, new technology allow them to do this, allow to stay in contact, allow to travel. Second thing, this is very big, they love experience. What is the biggest fear? FOMO. How many of you know what FOMO means? 1, 2, they're all young. 3, 4. Fear of missing out. You're missing out an experience. They love doing this. They don't buy watches, they don't buy cars. They like experience. They like jumping from a plane. And the last one is they love learning. Since they're young, the parents tell them, it's important that you study, knowledge is power. If you know, you can be better. And then they end up learning. And the MOOC industry, massive online open course, it's decuplicating in the next 5 years, actually in the next 2 years, because now we're in 2018. Again, what do they like to buy? How do they behave? And which kind of companies are, let's say, so close to them and understand the way they behave and they engage in how they're doing it? I've been told by Mark to leave some seconds, so it's easier between the slides. The first thing is CSR becomes purpose. Before, in the 80s and 90s, CSR was very much a theoretical business word, corporate social responsibility. It's good to be good. But now it's important to show your purpose. Purpose is really important, and when they look for a job, not only when they look to buy. This is a very nice book that I advise all of you to buy and read, and it's kind of a good bestseller in the US. It's called Good is the New Cool. And it's tell you again, you're not cool because you show sex or because you show a nice car or a big villa. You're cool because you do good, you behave well. And companies are realizing this. This is Los Angeles 2 weeks ago. And Nike, for example, is not talking anymore about big stars. 20 years ago, you had Michael Jordan on that poster. Now they're briefing, and we work with the agency that does the briefing to hire models for Nike, is acceptancy. It's equality. This went out very much when there was a Black Lives Matter as well. How many of you know Rolex? How many of you know the owner of Rolex? The owner of Rolex is a foundation. The founder of Rolex in the 50s passed away, left all his money to a foundation. The foundation helps young artists to spend a year with famous directors. Nobody knew, but more and more Rolex is not associating itself with golf or tennis or bling sport. They associate themselves with a foundation. Same with Desigual and Zara. The concept of beauty, Oliviero Toscani was here around, he knows much about beauty, is changing a lot. We don't look more at the models of the 80s and 90s into parties, into cocaine, into drinking. Now they do sport, and they are showing themselves for their diversity. Big brand like Ferrari, associated to noise, to fast, to speed, they're planning to enter Formula E. Formula E is the electric vehicle one. And then the last one for our host, 15 years ago, this would have been probably impossible. But in 2015, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, announced that Microsoft loved Linux. Again, open up to new companies open up to who can be potentially our competitor 20 years ago, but now it's very much our partner. So again, remember, CSR is purpose. Young people like what is good. Follow the way we behave, follow the way we buy, and thank you very much, especially to the partners, Microsoft and Coca-Cola and Barson, who helped us put together the survey and the event. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Our second Pecha Kucha speaker, so it's time for our third one, Sofia Chrysopoulou. Sorry, I hope yes, I pronounced it well. Senior Manager, Government Relations from Coca-Cola.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Well, before you start, I just wanted to say a few things that we're at the very end. Okay, perfect. So I hope it does. It feels like cracking a code when you're talking about millennials and the communication. But it is all about listening and asking. First of all, asking questions, being curious, and then listen to them. They grow up in an era of false news, but also in an era of transparency. But transparency is the rule, but falsity is no exception. So they live in a world that it is capable of the very good, of the very bad, a very fragile world and very fragile reality. We have two types of millennials. There are the early millennials that I can do anything attitude, the dreamers, but there are the younger millennials who are more down to earth, who are more realistic, and actually they are product of the late political realities, that can go to the extremes or also make them leave their country and work somewhere else. They want to co-create, and Europe needs to listen to this. Because if you want to co-create and and create content and be part of something bigger, then this is the chance of Europe to tap on this potential that millennials have, this connectivity, and together we can achieve anything attitude. And of course, from Microsoft study, you all know the attention span of millennials, 8 seconds, and that's maximum of it. They consume media simultaneously, working on emails, playing games, being on the internet, and fusing their private lives together with their professional lives. So where will you find them? Where will Europe find these millennials? In the more ephemeral of all the media. The absolute ephemeral is live streaming, like we do now, or live tweeting. And this is where you need to change also the mode of communication to reach this audience. Oh, I'm doing well. Now, in terms of timing, they are impatient. But don't get this as that they are, they don't care or they want to do just fast. No, millennials, we want to get things moving and happening soon and very, very good. And they're taking shortcuts, They're taking shortcuts. If they do not own something, they share and they tap to somebody else's ownership. So it's the we economy. Later on, the millennials, so closer to Gen Z, they are more about me economy, and they all, they want to personalize things, and everything needs to be about them. But that's a mix, and it's okay because perfection is boring. Perfection is very boring. Millennials want authenticity, and you can be. That goes for politicians as well. Also, look at the stars they are admiring. It's more about being human and less about being perfect. And this is how they tackle failure as well. Early millennials, I think we are more, okay, let's not take all these risks, but younger millennials are all about taking risks, and they may fail, and it is fine, and they will talk about it, and they will share their experience. I don't know what's coming next. Okay, unless you've been in a cave for the past years, you all know what this means. But what it does not mean that you only live today. Millennials care about the future. We care about the future. And I mean, we've all attended today the discussion. They're all forward-looking. So they are dreaming, and they want to have a better planet, a better environment, a better society. And I mean, what less would we expect from the future leaders of Europe? They need to be at the table, and as the previous speaker said, and thanks for saying that, they need to be at the table and make us dream also bigger. And don't take, millennials' hesitation to get involved in traditional politics. They don't want that. This meaning they don't want to get involved. To the contrary, they have the highest rates of volunteering. and being activists online. What does this mean? This means that they want to have an impact, but they don't trust the means of traditional politics. And that's why politics should pass from storytelling, which is very good at, to story doing, to story living, to make Europe also a project of heart, actually, and address the positive feelings people can have about Europe as well, and don't get tricked. Millennials are bombarded every minute with messages, with advertising, with narratives. Just telling them that you're authentic does not take you anywhere. They can see through the superficial layer, they can see through the commercial layer, and they are asking about the story living. So what do we need to do? Well, I think you said it before. We don't want to be represented. We want to be present, and we want to take decisions. And that was exactly what I wanted to say with this slide. Break down the fences. Europe and its institutions, politicians need to break down the fences and be open for a two-way conversation. And we've seen in the other side of the Atlantic as well, you don't need to be a millennial to be politically, to disrupt the political landscape. But what it shows is that people not always vote for, ideologically, and it's not because they want to dismiss the professionalism or the knowledge. No, they want change. They want to live in a better world, and they are going maybe for uncharted territories because they want to live what they now think is not the right place for them to be. So they would experiment, and in Europe sometimes we do that because we have a safety net around it with the institutions and the rule of law. So what is the solution? Basically, this is what we need to ask, to be solutions-oriented. And we need to ask ourselves, are we relevant as institutions and as companies, as civil society? How relevant are we? Do we make a world a better place? And are we indispensable, really? Are we? And then the last message I would like to give is that, well, millennials, it's good to get them involved into politics and go and vote, true. But I think the most important is that baby boomers trust the millennials and vote for them in the next elections as well. Thank you very much.
Sophia, echoing a bit as well what our millennials were saying yesterday from the World Cafe. Now it's time for our very last Pechakucha speaker, Mark Mosse, Senior Director for EU Government Affairs at Microsoft. Mark.
Good morning again. So I would love to invite you to a journey to the digital transformation. Not easy to me because when I was your age, I didn't have a computer at all. I had a pen. It worked well, but I have to say that I had to adapt. I had to transform myself to go into the new world, which is something you know better than I, which is a world with a computer, a phone, a tablet, a device, anyway, to access to the internet. And through these tools, you can transform the way you interact with others. It impacts the democracy. It impacts our daily lives, and it impacts our work's life. I just want to mention, just 1 second, a little bit Microsoft with Bill Gates and Satya Nadella, our CEO today. Bill Gates' vision was about having a PC on every desk in every home. Satya wants to empower everyone to achieve more. What is behind this vision is about democratization of the IT. And this is where we are now with the fourth industrial revolution. It's a huge opportunity in terms of jobs. We'll talk about this later, about transforming our industry. It's also something we should think about when we talk about social fabric. We should pay attention to the social fabric, in particular with the artificial intelligence, which is, again, where we are going now, with a possibility to transform our lives, our industry, our democracy in a new way. But we have to pay attention to some risk, in particular to privacy. This transformation, and in particular with artificial intelligence, cloud computing, requires that we are very cautious on the principles such as privacy, fundamental rights. It's all about a world that we should keep in mind, which is respect. We should respect the fundamental rights. When it goes to new technology, we should absolutely keep safe the timeless value we have in Europe, and GDPR has been a good sign to show that Europe can lead on this. Because when you talk about this digital transformation, we talk about data, we talk about data center, we talk about cloud computing, we talk about something that is maybe difficult to see in a concrete way, but that can impact our daily lives. And what is coming soon is quantum computing. I can tell you that the quantum computing will speed up the way we can calculate, we can use the data. It will help to transform, but it means that we absolutely need, again, to keep in life the timeless value. And of course, you love the robots. The robots are everywhere. Sometimes people are a little bit concerned about robots. They will replace human. This is why we need to have a human-centric approach of this transformation. We can love the robots because they can help us. They can help us if we invest in one area as a key priority. It has been said several times. But if I was on an island and I had to choose one area policy to invest in, it would be education, education, education. There is no doubt on this. And if you say this, you say that you want to fight against digital divide. You want to have digital inclusion. This is why accessibility is so important. We want to have everyone on board. No one should be left behind when you go through this journey on digital transformation. And if you look at this sign, it's the access to internet. You know that in Europe, 53 homes in Europe does not have access to internet in rural zone. How can we talk about digital transformation if so many people in rural zone does not have access to this? We should use some new technology such as white space. This is why Europe has to invest in R&D to compete in the new world and to partner with some players to have a multi-stakeholder approach. This is, again, required for the EU in the future. Because there is super concrete things that can happen with the digital transformation, such as preventing some disease or curing some disease such as a cancer. And artificial intelligence is one of the assets we have now and we'll have more in the future to help solving this crucial issue, including, it has been said so often, climate change. Artificial intelligence is one huge opportunity to help working on climate change and also to help the farmer to be more accurate in the way they grow. And we should remind when we are looking to the future, to the history. And 1 century ago, it was a few days ago, we had the celebration on the First World War. It was the first industrial war. We should remind this that it's at the core of the EU project to avoid this kind of tragedy and to keep the peace in our continent. This is why it has been said, everyone, and in particular the youth, should vote next election in Europe. And in particular because Europe is also at stake. When you look at the cyber world, there is some threat. In particular because we know that some countries are attacking other countries. And we have to plead for a digital peace now to avoid attack against democracy and against our countries through the cyber possibility. And to do so, to achieve all these goals, we need to work together. The millennials, for sure, but maybe some older person that are super eager to work with the new generation to build a new world that we'll be happy to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all of our inspiring Pachacucha speakers. How did you feel? Did you like our Pachacucha speakers, all of them? Inspiring pictures, messages? Yes? Very good. So now we will prepare ourselves for our fishbowl. But before we do that, I have an announcement to make, and therefore I'm calling FEPS Secretary General to the stage.
Thank you, Maria. I have bad news, but I have also very good news. The bad news first is, unfortunately, this morning we got the information from Vice President Franz Timmermans that he could not come today because he had an urgent issue to solve in Hungary on the democracy issue. So he left this morning Brussels, and this is the bad news. But I have a very, very good news. You know, FEPS has also a very good network, and we have very good friends. And so I called my good friend Arne Lietz, who is a member of the European Parliament. Can you help us? And he said immediately, yes, for sure, I can do this, and I would love to do this, to do the fishbowl debate together with the millennials and the Millennial Dialogue, because this is a so important issue now for the upcoming European elections. That's why I'm keen and I'm eager to come and to join and to do this fishbowl debate together with the millennials here in Brussels. So I call Arne to come up to the stage. He is currently campaigning already for the next European elections, which are for sure, we have talked the whole morning on that in May, and he's doing a lot, especially concerning young voters and young voting. And I know that you're doing also a kind of a radio show with young people in Eastern Germany, but on the other side, what Arne said to me this morning, and I'm very pleased, he is respecting also the Sustainable Development Goals. And what he tries to do now before the elections is to organize a fashion show in the European Parliament with textiles made by sustainable production and with good kind of way of work in that. I think these are concrete examples, and congratulations for that, Arne, but please join this piece here, and Maria explains a bit how the fishbowl debate is now going on. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ernst. And please, please, millennials, don't be disappointed. This was very unfortunate and very last minute. Franz Timmermans is very eager to hear your messages. He was there with you, with some of you, back in 2016, and he has agreed to join FEPS on the occasion of its New Year's reception, 30th of January. So keep this date in your calendars, because we will bring all of the millennials the report and discuss with Franz Timmermans again. You will be heard by Franz Timmermans, but just a bit later. So thank you for your understanding. As also Ernst expressed, Arne, Dankeschön. Thank you very much for joining us. This also shows the commitment of our political family to listen to millennial voices yet again. So here you see at the stage that we have 2 empty chairs, and I'm looking for brave millennials in the audience that actually sit and join us. So here it's very good that also our president has joined, because she also agreed to pitch in. So thank you very much, Maria. So here you will have the empty chair in the middle, and 2 leading politicians, progressive leading politicians in the European Parliament. And so I'm looking here around the audience. Who would like to address both Maria and Arne on the issues that we discussed in the World Café yesterday? So here we had 3 proposals that we would like to bring forward. We can go again to Chris, Carlotta, etc., but I would be very, very happy if also other millennials that took part in the World Café yesterday would be taking the floor. All right, please.
Take one of the mics. You mentioned the SDGs. Are we on board? Yeah. Yes.
So please state your name and your proposal for discussion.
Yes, name is Yang Bordu, independent advisor around the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And it's primarily about how to, given the direction, given how close it is to the climate talks, COP Conference of Parties 24, in Katowice next month, to address ways to put on a path to full decarbonization by 2050, and developing means of implementation through public, private, and civil society.
So your reactions? More climate change. How can we address this?
Well, let's hope that the next COP will be in line with the high commitment we took in Paris. Because Paris Agreement means, from my viewpoint, a turning point. Is saying that from now on, all signing up the agreement, they need really to translate these into their national decisions when it comes transports, housing, the way we use energy across the board. Well, I must say that in the European Union we are starting to introduce some relevant changes. Example, a few weeks ago we voted in the European Parliament a very important directive to make sure that transports, cars and others, they will go to a different kind of engine, a low carbon engine. This is a practical implication to reduce pollution. But we need to keep the pressure, and the next step will be to have a full European agenda driven by sustainable development goals indeed. So you are right about this.
Thank you. And Arne?
Well, you actually got me on a issue I'm working on as a member of parliament. I do 3 committees. 2 of them are development and foreign politics. And in foreign politics, I said, because Trump left the Paris Agreement, which is so strange and so ridiculous, that we have to be stronger on diplomacy, on climate. So we have this global vision of Federica Mogherini, and I said we need to have more climate diplomacy. And so we wrote a report in the European Parliament that we need to have more diplomats who are knowledgeable, and our parliament, also the foreign committee, has to go out to ask for the climate goals in every country, and we have to be stronger on this dialogue. And so we succeeded with this, and we handed that over to Guterres to showcase. He came to the parliament, Guterres, the UN General Secretary, and said, you do more on SDGs and on climate. And for me, it was important after the year of work that we went to him and we handed him over our report from the European Parliament on more climate and on more SDGs and bringing things together. And the second thing is, Ernst was already mentioning the textile. Textile is the one which is very, very touchable. Germany has a textile initiative. The Dutch have a textile initiative to have more SDGs or more sustainability inside, but they didn't succeed because the Commission blocked it. And so we made, again, a report in the parliament to have more sustainable development goals and more sustainable no child labor, good work, good payment for the people, so full-fledged of SDGs in textile, supply chain, and so we work on that. And as you said, we're going to have a fashion show in Brussels. We'll see when that is going to happen, and you get invited. But FEPS also did a book on climate diplomacy. So that is an important thing. Ask Ernst that you want to have that, because this is the newest product on climate diplomacy that's new.
Thank you very much. So, applause. Thank you for your answers. Now, any other millennial would like to take here the spot, because this should, go in a rotation. Make use of this opportunity. You asked to be heard. You wanted the platform. Yes, we have another one. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pietro and I work at Burson Cohn & Wolfe, a consultancy in EU public affairs. And I participated yesterday in the Millennial dialogue. And one of the issues we touched upon was also trade. And I'm very interested in this topic. And it was basically one of the questions on the report was about, like, what's the future of trade? Is it going towards protectionism? Is it going towards like more FTAs, free trade agreements, multilateralism? And also, what's the relationship basically between trade and human and labor rights across the world, if trade can be a tool to improve this? And I wanted also, given the current trade issues, for example, between the EU and the US, and I wanted to ask you what's the take and the view of S&D towards the next elections on the future of trade, on protectionism versus liberalism. Thanks a lot.
Let's start again. Okay, let me come in. Many thanks for your question, because this is indeed an extremely important issue. And what is happening is the following. Of course, we progressives, we believe that trade can provide new opportunities to create jobs and to improve living standards, but under clear conditions. We need to use trade agreements to improve the standards in the partners working with us. But now we are in a new situation, because we have another position coming from particularly Trump. The Trump America is American first and being very selfish about the way to deal with the rest of the world. We don't share this position. We want a world based on open cooperation and solidarity, but that's exactly why we need, we, European Union, to negotiate our trade agreements in such a way that we improve living standards everywhere. Let me tell you that right now, Europe is a central actor for trade agreements. We are negotiating trade agreements across the world. We had one with Canada. We are now completing another one with Japan. Something is happening with Mexico. Something can happen with Australia. So everybody is looking for us. But exactly because everybody is looking for us, we should be clear, say, okay, we are open to negotiate trade agreements, but you need to respect our standards, environmental and social.
Thank you very much, Maria. Arne.
I pick on the environmental because I'm very keen on that one as well. It's interesting. We actually, it was the S&D, the progressives who got the climate into the agreement with Canada. And so they even topped it, and by end of September they had another layer of climate that both sides wanted to fulfill the Paris Agreement. And that is also a new standard for Japan. So the progressives brought the climate into the context. I think real progressives is that we have carbon pricing and also ETS, like emission trade system, in the future involved as well, because that is like the high end, but we have to target that one. And yes, we can have a big impact. I was in Bangladesh with a group of progressives, and we fought for better labor movement situations in Bangladesh. We had Rana Plaza 5 years ago, where 1,126 people got killed. And now they had to improve their business module and their social standards and the health standards and labor rights. And when we were there was a letter from the Commission saying, if you don't act to the International Labour Organization standards, the ILO standards, then you get a better trading situation. We have a special trade situation. It's called everything but arms, that a poor country has better access to the European market. And that could be challenged. And so through that challenge of GSP+, this is another trade instrument, or everything but arms, we can set some targets on labor standards, on working conditions, health conditions, no child labor. And that is our instrument. So trade is actually very, very strong. And even when I said this to Duterte, and I close with that one, on the Philippines, also at a mission from the progressives, we said over 8,000 people are killed by, so to say, the drug war he's doing, but no one can go to the court, and they don't even have a death penalty. That is against human rights, and human rights are linked to the trade agreement GSP+. And so if you don't act like that, I don't see why we should extend that. And so that is a very pressure point. He got all the European ambassadors saying, leave the country in the next 24 hours. That is ridiculous. There was a lot of fuss just by one press statement we did as progressives, and we talked on trade. So you see, trade is a very important sphere, but we have to be very wise in order to implement new things, like also trade laws and international standards on new positions.
Thank you very much. So a round of applause. Thank you. So we see that from climate to Europe being an open continent to trade, but also with given standards, with given conditions. We have here another one. Very good. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, good late morning, everybody. I'm Viola from the European Students Forum, AG Europe. And well, we have been talking for 2 days about how millennials can get involved in politics, how can they get their voices being heard. And ultimately, I think there are many structures for making sure that young people can express their opinions, such as the structured dialogue or other platforms such as this one. But what I'm really missing is to see more youth faces in politics in the European Parliament, especially. And I wanted to ask you if you would be in favor of quotas for millennials, let's say for under 35, let's say, in European parties, I would say, or in the parliament itself.
Thank you.
What about you?
I can start because we're in the middle of the discussion in Germany right now. And I have no hair, but I'm 42. So, and I was the youngest in my group. So when I saw the scale of who old are the politicians, So I was the youngest when I started here in Parliament, in my group from the German progressives. And now we have actually on the list a young lady who didn't make it in the votes, but she's been presented to place number 5 in order to showcase that they want to have a youth face in there. And so there needs to be a balance. And I think I also strong believe, and I do this in my own hometown. I talked people, I had no candidate to run for national office. And I said, well, I need someone. And I asked the lady if she would like to run for national parliament, just out of the blue, for the next 6 months. And she said, well, I become a member. And now she's so active. She's running the youth. She's a leader in the youth. And now she's want to go for a city council, not the national, but city council. And she's doing SCGs and bringing the city to a fair trade town, like really bringing that all on. And there we have a new team. So I took my position and gave that to the younger ones on the weekend, that we have a new leadership, because I see new faces and they have to take it on. So I even stepped back of a position to have new leaders just this weekend.
Well, look, let me tell you, I'm fully in favor. I'm fully in favor. The same way I'm in favor of having full parity in gender terms, men and women. Of course, I know there is sometimes a discussion that we should not introduce artificial instruments to rebalance the composition of the list. So there are people saying, no, we don't need quotas, we do not need the principle of parity. But look, from my experience, we do need. Because when we really want to shift the composition of power, this is a struggle. And there is a lot of resistance. So I'm not hiding from what really happens. And so we need to have a powerful decision. Yes, we need to have a proper gender balance and a stronger role by young people. So that's why quotas are necessary, and I support them.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So now we have concrete actions, both from our Dragon's Den and now our fish bowl discussion. Thank you, Arne. Thank you, Maria, for your time and engagement with our millennials in the fish bowl. Now it's also time then to FEP Secretary General to summarize these 2 exciting days of debate with millennials, for a stronger Europe, for engaging millennials in European elections, but also making millennial voices heard. So then, Ernst, you have the floor, and then we will hear more from Sergei Stanishev, President of the Party of the European Socialists.
Thank you, Maria. And I think the task is a very difficult one to wrap up these wonderful 2 days of reflection and this wonderful 2 days of leading us to that what we have brought in the Millennial Dialogue right from the beginning, meaning the 3P. Being positive, being participatory, and being progressive. And all our thoughts we have so far developed over these 2 days were guided by, I think, a little bit by these 3 Ps. And if I could summarize it, and it's very difficult, but nevertheless, I have brought together 6 challenges, I would like to say, which are in a way necessary to go further with action and to go further also with the European project. The first challenge, for sure, is democracy in Europe. For example, we heard yesterday from FEP's Vice President Zita Gurmai the challenges in Hungary, which are there and which are threatening clearly that what we have brought up in Europe and European democracy. We heard the Dragons this morning discussing also on the challenge of democracy. And dear friends and dear millennials, this is the challenge for the next European elections in May of next year. While we have discussed a bit also in which way this challenge could be addressed, there was the question also of the lists of European-wide European candidature lists. There was the question of getting young people more in the European Parliament. So this is all what we have to discuss during the campaign, and also what we have to bring forward for the next 5 years within the European Commission work and within the European Parliament work. The second challenge I would like to say is the challenge of integration and the challenge of engagement of the citizens within the European project and with the European Union. We have discussed this morning during the Dragon. It was also, I think, last evening in the different workshops we have organized, especially to enhance the possibility for young people, for the millennials, to participate, not only to be represented, but to be present in the political debate and be present also in the political decision making. This is the challenge, which is a common challenge of the European road, started 60 years ago, but also the challenge for the European road for the next 10, 15 or 20 years. The third challenge I would like to bring here up as a summary of our debate is the challenge of solidarity in Europe, the challenge of reducing poverty, and the challenge especially reducing the inequalities still existing in the European Union. We have still 120 million people living in poverty in the European Union. This is not acceptable, and this challenge, especially we as socialists and democrats, we as progressives have to solve and we have to tackle with it. This is the challenge of the social welfare. This is the challenge of the minimum wage we have discussed. This is eventually the challenge also of the maximum wage we discussed this morning. And this is the challenge of bringing together a new system of social welfare which have been guided us in the last century and in the first decade of this century, but has to be revisited and has to be renewed. And my fifth challenge, for sure, is the challenge, it was also addressed right now, the challenge of gender equality, the challenge of the question of equal pay also for both genders, the challenge of bringing together all the citizens to a kind of a fair and just society in Europe. And I would like to close with my sixth challenge, which I heard over the 2 days. This is the challenge of the world and the challenge of the globalization, with the question of, for sure, having a good policy to tackle the climate change, having an enormous innovative policy to cope with the digital revolution, and last but not least, and Enrique has brought this up and we have discussed this, I think also to have a clearly good shaped migration policy. We are signing now, next week or in 2 weeks' time, in Marrakesh, the Global Compact on Migration. This Global Compact on Migration, please read it. This is the most progressive document I have ever seen in the last years, and this is something we as progressives, we have to battle for it and not to be clear, not to accept any kind of coming up from these populist right-wing forces now in Europe, not to sign this Global Compact on Migration. This is what I would like to bring to you before I call the President of the Party of the European Socialists for the call for action. But let me finish with something. I'm a baby boomer, I'm not a millennial. We have brought something in this European project, I think our generation. It's up now to your generation, the millennials, to bring something new within the European Union. And the overall guiding principle should be that we should all live and work in an equal, just, and fair Europe. And because this is the only way we can survive and the only way we can also have something where we can dream of. And for me, the dream was, in my generation, the John Lennon song of Imagine. For Anya, it was the song of the Winds of Change of the Scorpions. I don't know exactly what is your song now, but I'm curious to listen to the new song of the millennial generation. Thank you very much, and I call Sergei to come up to the floor and give us the call for action for the next European election.
Thank you very much, Ernst. You made my life very, very easy. So the wrap-up here by FEPS Secretary General Ernst Stetter, with 6 concrete points for action, a very insightful report, Sergei, that we have prepared for the Party of the European Socialists, the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, a comprehensive roadmap. So tell us, will the progressives take this roadmap on ahead of the next European elections?
I believe so. And I think my job is done. I can leave now. No, but I am very happy to be here. I listened to the big challenges which were outlined by Ernst, and I know that you are having a very intensive and in-depth debate about all the challenges we are facing as progressives in Europe these days, and that your generation is facing. And I'll try really to be brief, because I know that Frans Timmermans will be coming, and no, he's okay. Then I'll replace him to the extent that I can. But my point is, you know, today it's a general place that everyone who speaks about the problems which the younger generation is facing is complaining. How terrible it is that young people, we can have the first generation which is lost in a way in this transition, global transition, and in these changes. How bad it is that your generation is facing a life which is much less secure and with worse prospects than the ones of the previous. And these are all facts and real facts. And if you listen to the speeches of EPP or the speeches of the extreme nationalists, they'll say all the same. But the question is, who does what? Because, you know, Europe, for generations, was the source of inspiration and hope. Why so? I think the answer is very simple. Because it was providing better life for everyone for the next generation. People were confident about their future. And today is the opposite. And I personally believe that all Europeans, not only your generations, are fed up with just general talking. Fed up with words which have no consequences, with expressions of concern which do not bring commitment and do not bring delivery. And this is why I can say that our political family is the only one which will make your life center of our campaign. And our youth plan, which was elaborated in the last couple of years by all the stakeholders in the family, all the parties, the commissioners, the foundation, the group, everyone was participating. At least I will do everything what I can to make it one of the 5 pledges, not just, you know, declarations, but pledges about what we want and we shall achieve in the works of the next Commission and the European Parliament. And I think this is clear enough, that we don't want just to stop at the level of complaints and declarations and expressions of concerns. Why should younger people trust us? A very good question, because they're very distrustful about politicians in general. The first reason is that we are the only ones which actually did something, and this is the Youth Guarantee. And I remember when I was elected as president of PS, together with YES, we decided that we should make a strong public campaign aiming at a result regarding the problem of the young people with a mechanism facilitating their lives. And this is the Youth Guarantee. And many people were extremely skeptical if it's just not another campaign of flag waving just to demonstrate our good intentions. But the important thing is that we did achieve a result. 6 billion euro in the budget of the current Commission, in the current framework, for the Youth Guarantee schemes and mechanisms. And in reality, it really helped millions of young people across Europe to start their lives as a full-fledged members of the community, of the society, and of the labor market. Because we know a fundamental problem. Everywhere across the European Union, the youth unemployment is usually 2-fold higher than the average level in this country. And there are countries like Spain, Greece, where the situation is really tragical. Italy as well. So that means you need not only national, but also European action. And thanks to the support of our prime ministers, of our group in the European Parliament, we managed to deliver. And it is working. Yes, it is working not evenly in every country. For many years, for example, in Spain, due to the bureaucratic procedures of the conservative government, it was simply not functioning well enough. But in many countries, especially in countries and regions where socialists are in power, it's bringing very good results, like as in Belgium, in Brussels including. But the next question which we ask ourselves, is that enough? And the answer is definitely no. Because 6 billion euro cannot create the scale of support for the whole generation, so each person could have an even chance and start in life. And this is why we sit down again and discussed how we should extend this initiative and turn it into a full-scale European policy supporting the young youth generation. And the whole idea was to start from the baby months of every person and to lead it until the full integration in the market. This is why there are 4 fundamental pillars in this action plan. First, of course, is the child guarantee, because we know that inequality in Europe is growing. We know, both between countries and within every society, we know how many children cannot have a decent meal, a decent health care, and decent education in the kindergartens and then at school. And we managed to break through in the European Parliament with at least partial initiatives. But this is fundamental. And then, of course, the youth guarantee. Because we just don't want a youth guarantee to be squeezed in the next financial framework, in the next 7 years. We want it to be extended, to be much more powerful and resourceful in the next European budget, so it really makes a difference. Then comes Erasmus+. You know, in the big European budget, which for 7 years is 900 billion euro, this is a very tiny part. But this is one of the most visible and recognizable programs of the European Union. What does that mean? It means that it has to be extended and to be accessible to more young people, because this opens up the possibilities and also the thinking of young people. We want Erasmus Plus for all, not only for students, but also for students in the high classes of the colleges. We want the young people who don't have the money for many things to have access to this program, which also means more resources, more money for this. And finally, the cultural check. No, Europe is not just a common market, at least for us socialists. Europe is our identity, our identities, which enrich each other. Nobody wants to deprive a Portuguese or Spanish or Bulgarian of their cultural heritage. This is part of our, richness. We want to be complementary, but we want to make culture not a privilege just for few of the young people, but we want to make it accessible. And here comes the idea of the cultural check. And I'm very proud that some of our governments, as the PD government in Italy, made it into a reality that every young person turning 18 receives this voucher and can spend it for cultural events, going to movies or theater or many other events. And we want to spread it across Europe. And these 4 pillars we shall put in the core of our political manifesto for the elections. And furthermore, we shall make it one of our red lines for the work of the next European Commission. And this will be our condition in shaping the future institutions, that they finally have to deliver. Because, you know, the current Commission promised many things, started some changes under our pressure and at our demand, but the scale of this change is far from sufficient. And this is why, addressing also some of these challenges which Ernst outlined, and I believe we all see them, feel them, suffer because of their damages and negative things which they create, is that we need really to make a good fight for Europe as a political movement, as progressives, as social democrats, because this project is a, you know, historical anomaly in a way. If you look at history of Europe, it's thousands of years of wars. Less than 80 years ago, less than one life cycle of a human being, Europe was in flames of the Second World War, with undescribable sufferings of people and complete destruction of our economies and societies. And now we live in peace, mutual respect and cooperation. This is unique. But this is very fragile. And will make the political fight with extreme nationalists who want, with the right-wing nationalists, who want to destroy this Europe, who want to blame all the problems on Europe. And this is the same phenomenon which we've seen for centuries and which we've seen in the 1930s. You have to blame the others, the refugees, the Jews, the Arabs, the Muslims, the whoever. Everyone who is different has to be, you know, blamed for our own problems. And they promise a return to the past, which, by the way, the golden past never existed. It's a fake alternative. And we have to make this fight. But we also have to make the fight for a different Europe of change against the status quo which is represented by the European People's Party. Because what they say, things are going fine, we overcame the crisis, Europe is fine, no need for big change. No, Europe does need a big change. And we are the ones who can deliver and bring a trustworthy, progressive change which will create fairness, which will defend democracy, which will turn Europe into a really social project. And that's a hell of a mission, a lot of work to do. So let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Let's do it together. This is how we wrap up our amazing, amazing two-day conference of the Millennial Dialogue on Europe. So the discussion, however, does not end here. We will continue the discussion with millennials, with our leading European politicians, and even more importantly so, ahead of the next European elections. So we will need all of you. The conversation will continue downstairs, so we will have our networking lunch in -1 at the presence of Oliviero Toscani, so you can also appreciate his exposition, nibble some nice food, and continue the discussion. As we announced as well, unfortunately, Mr. Timmermans could not come, so we just heard about it. He could not join us here today. Yes, thank you, Sergey. So we count on you to do that. Exactly. And so please convey our message that millennials did work together for 2 intensive days, making the roadmap that you are to take ahead of the next European elections. And so on behalf of FEPS, on behalf of the Foundation for European Progressive Studies, all of the amazing partners that are here listed that joined this platform for the dialogue between generations, millennials, older people, baby boomers, it doesn't matter. Millennials, politicians, European institutions.
Did you discuss the taxation of Microsoft in your debates?
A little bit. We touched upon it.
GAFA in general?
But last but not least, thank you once again to all of our partners. I would also invite the FEPS team, Think Young team, to come to the stage, because without them, this work, this whole conference and the report would not have been possible. So please join us to the stage. Let's take a family picture. Everybody, please come to the stage. Participants too, so that we have a nice recollection for afterwards. So thank you very much to every one of you. Thank you. Thank you, Ernst. Dankeschön.
On the back.
Yes, thank you very much. The mic again. Yes. All right, Arne, bitte. Okay, I sit next to you, Arne. Yes, please, Sergey. Come to the stage, please. Come to the stage.
The second row can be on their knees.
Thank you.
It's not a funeral, it's something happy.
Yay, millennials! Yay!
Come on.
Okay, thank you. Dankeschön, Anne. No, you're a lifesaver. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Can I go? Yes, and please take your belongings with you, because the room